February 6, 2019 Municipal Land Use Board meeting for the Borough of River Edge. Everybody stand for the flag salute. Chris?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by posting on the bulletin board at Borough Hall, by email to Ridgewood News, the Record, and submissions to all persons entitled to same as provided by law of a schedule including the date and time of this meeting. I would like to remind all members of the public that we have 3 fire exits. One where Mr. Casa just walked in, behind me here, and behind him there, over there. In addition, we are being recorded for both audio and video purposes of creating a record during the public portion of this meeting. If any member of the public wishes to be recorded or heard, they need only identify themselves by stating their full name and address for the record, and they can make a statement or ask any questions they need to ask. Roll call, please.
Chair Killian.
Here.
Ms. Boland. Here. Mr. Merman.
Here.
Mr. Grosso.
Here.
Mr. Cray.
Here.
Mr. Caslin.
Here.
Mr. Gibbons.
Here.
Mrs. Sedaris.
Here. Okay. First order.
Sorry. Nope. Mr. Bartoloni is still on the dais. I had you marked.
Yes, there he is.
No, I'm here.
Okay. The first order of business is to approve the minutes from the January 16th meeting. I believe you had a couple comments, correct?
Mr. Chair, I have a couple of very minor corrections. On the cover sheet, it lists Mr. Bartoloni as still councilman. That's no longer true.
Thank you for pointing that out.
Well, we're going to have records, so let's make sure the best we can. And likewise is true on the second page. And one other one. On the third page, the last paragraph, it, second sentence said they did restripe the building. I think the word building should be pavement.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it.
Any other comments, Chris?
Mr. Chairman, on page 5, just to reflect the record that I did vote on the application. Doesn't include my vote in the first paragraph at the end there, as everyone else.
Okay. Got that?
I'm sorry. What
Okay.
was that change?
So,
Actually, no, she's done. You don't need to. Any other comments? A motion to approve the minutes?
As
corrected?
amended.
Moved by Mr. Merman.
Have a second?
a second.
By Mr.
Caslin.
Caslin.
I've recused myself from that, so I will abstain from the vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay, very good.
I abstain.
The next order of business is the memorialization for La Toscana, 637 Kitcamet Road, River Edge, New Jersey. Block 614, Lot 8.02. This was for their food handler's license. If you recall, they came in last meeting and they, per the borough ordinance, they were required to get a food license through the ordinance. They came in, they got their approval. This is based on the approval that we had. I just want to give the board a quick update on a phone call that I had with the attorney the subsequent day. The landlord has agreed to replace that fence in the back. He's going to keep it, one of the homeowners has a fence, a vinyl fence. He's going to try to keep it as close to that as he can, and I'm sure that the residents that back up to the market will be very happy to have a new fence back there that's not in disrepair. He's also agreed to do some work on the macadam behind the building. And thirdly, we talked about the sidewalk having some cones around it. He explained to the attorney that that was actually done at the bequest of the borough's inspector because it's a trip hazard. So when the spring comes, he's going to try to redo that and eliminate the trip hazard that's there, but that's why that's there now.
I think it's an open pit.
Yeah. No, it's actually a riser.
Okay.
Yeah. So I got out and looked. So that's the board update on it, and I'm very happy with the progress we've made with that building on it. So, Mr. Merman.
I have, as usual, a couple of minor corrections. The resolution refers to the body as the planning board on the first sheet. We're the land use board. And same thing's true on the next page.
Page 2 of the now therefore, correct?
Excuse me?
The now therefore clause on the second page?
On the second page, there's one on the the third paragraph. Now therefore it is resolved that the planning board.
We'll make those changes.
Okay, so that's it. I think it's just the template you're working from.
I'll let the secretary know to make that correction.
Yeah. That's it, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Any other questions, concerns, corrections? Okay, I'd like to entertain a motion from those people that were here at the last meeting to approve the memorialization.
Make the motion as amended.
Have a second?
Second.
Mr. Castle? Okay, there'll be a roll call vote on that.
Chair Killian,
Yes.
Mr. Bartoloni,
Yes.
Mr. Craig,
Yes.
Mr. Merman,
Yes.
Mr. Caslin.
Yes.
And let me just see if Mr. Sedaris and Gibbons are here. Mr. Sedaris?
Was absent.
I don't have you marked as absent. You weren't here? Okay. Mr. Sedaris, Mr. Gibbons?
I was here.
You were here. Okay. So Mr. Gibbons?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Yes.
Chair Killian? I had you already marked as yes in my head.
Okay. Our next order of business is the presentation of the River Edge Community Center. That would be 895 Elm Avenue, Block 503, Lot 2. We have Mr. Costa for the borough. I'd like to welcome everybody in the audience. I'm sure this is what you're here for. Mr. Costa will be giving the presentation. I'll be opening it up to the board, and then once I open up to the board, we'll open up to the public. So you'll get an opportunity to question each of our professionals as they present what's going on tonight. I'm going to hand it to my attorney for a few minutes.
Board members, I don't know if any of you have been, I'm sorry, Mr. Bartoloni.
I was just going to say at this time I'm going to recuse myself and take a seat to the back. All right, thank you.
God bless you.
Bless you. I also want to take this moment to thank Tom for coming in tonight after with a stomach virus all day. He got the guts to come through and come for us tonight, so thank you for that, Tom.
Should quarantine both of us.
Yes.
Thank you. Good evening. I apologize to the public and to you. The best I could do. I wanted Vanna White, but this is the best I can bring this evening. But anyway, with that, months ago, we went before the
Just
mayor
one
and
second,
council.
Mr. Costa. Go ahead. Yes.
Before you get sworn, I just want to give the board an overview as to why they're here this evening and what your function is. For those of you that may have not been involved in this sort of presentation before, this is what's called capital review pursuant to Section 31 of the Municipal Land Use Law. That's just a really fun way of saying is that public funds are going to be expended because this board has control over certain elements or portions of the master plan. The Municipal Land Use Law says that you have the right on a capital review project to review it, make review and recommendations in conjunction with the master plan. You're not here to review, you're not here to approve, you're not here to deny. This is not site plan, there are no variances. This is simply a presentation that will be made. At the conclusion of it, if you have any sort of recommendations or comments, you can make them. They're certainly not binding. It's what's called a capital review project, so it's different than any other application you may have seen in the past.
Anybody from the board have any questions of our attorney? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good evening. Members of the public, good evening. For the record, Robert Louis Costa, C-O-S-T-A. Tonight, I am here as the township engineer in the borough of River Edge. I need to wear a different hat just to present to you tonight. To my left is Lee Klein. He's a traffic expert that's been on this project for some months now. And to the left of Mr. Klein is Kurt from DMR Architects. He's the architect on this project. He's been involved probably for more than 2 years, 3 years with the project. I know Councilman Bartoloni stepped down. Councilman Bartoloni was involved for many, many years, along with Vito Acquafida, former councilman who obviously passed away, was very involved in this project and the planning of the project prior to that. With that said, we went before the mayor and council 3 months ago to a packed audience. You couldn't even get a seat in the council chambers here this evening. With that, there was a subsequent meeting with changes. The mayor and council heard quite a few requests to make changes to the current project that's in front of you this evening, which the council actually instructed the two of us to make those changes and implement them on a new plan. Also, the council gave us permission, so to speak, to go out to do it in 2 phases. Phase 1 would be to demolish the existing American Legion, construct the parking lot, and then phase 2 would be to build the actual building on a pad site. To try to keep the library in motion, because obviously it's an ongoing entity, so you have people going and coming, and try to do everything in conjunction, not to create any upheaval or to their programs. With that said, let me give you just a quick overview, and then I'm going to pass the baton to the architect and obviously to the traffic person. Basically, just to give you the lay of the land, Continental, Elm Avenue, existing. The existing library, the existing parking lot in the library off of Elm, ingress and egress, and then again off of Continental. In this area where I'm pointing on the plan, to the north and to the west is the current American Legion building, which I believe everybody's familiar with. That would come down and then wrapped around the current American Legion building in the parking lot. The first issue, obviously, was on one of the schemes, ingress and egress would come only onto Elm. There would be no access, whether in or out, on Continental. This would be scheme number 7 that you're looking at tonight. We probably did about 9 schemes prior to what you see this evening. Again, based on public comment, based on comment from the ambulance corps, not to impact them, comment from the cultural center, comments from the Shade Tree Commission, comments from the general public. Most involved on Tenning Avenue and across the street on Elm, we've made some changes. Right now, currently there'll be an ingress and egress coming off of Elm. There'll be a connecting driveway into a new parking area. American Legion will be demolished. The ambulance corps building, the 6 spaces that they currently have that are marked for them will remain as is. Obviously new paving, new connection, but no connection to the new proposed parking lot. So how they exist today, they will exist when this is built. They'll have their 6 spots. Nothing will change for them. They'll have ingress and egress only for themselves. To the west of that will be a new driveway in and out on Continental. And then that will go in to the new parking area. New parking area with a walkway, with a drop-off for the senior citizen bus, with a connection, pedestrian access to the library, and again to the new community center. Community center, roughly 6,400 square feet, 6,300 square feet. You'll hear the internal makeups of that. Drainage, everything drains obviously towards the ditch. We're going to have to route it around the building and back into the ditch. There'll be obviously stormwater management. New lighting, new landscaping, so on and so forth. A new pedestrian access to go in. Also, there was a big concern with children crossing Continental, so we went a step further. We can also discuss in cooperation with Lee's firm We're gonna try not hardscape, it's just striping. We're gonna try to narrow and stripe Continental Avenue, because obviously right now Continental Avenue roughly has 4,000 cars, average daily traffic per day. We're gonna restripe Continental Avenue, we're gonna put bump outs for all the traffic, just paint at this point, just to see if it does work. Stripe the parking, stripe no parking signs, and basically try to narrow these lanes in order to slow down the traffic on Continental. And again, we can get up and discuss the speed limits and whatnot, and then have absolutely no parking on the southbound side of Continental. Get in. That's to start, but that's in conjunction with the overall plan. That's in front of you too.
I guess we'll open it up to the board members, and start on my left side here.
Just one point of clarification on what you just said here. So how exactly do you narrow Continental? Like,
Right now, striping. If this scheme ultimately works, and again, what we're doing is, instead of doing actual physical bump outs, if you went up Kitticack Road in Oroville, they physically did what's called bump outs. So they took the curb line, hardscape, and created these bump outs to narrow the lanes. What happens, normally a lane would be anywhere from 11 feet to 13 feet. Once you get wider than that, the motoring public has a sense that it can go faster. So there's been some studies on this, that if you actually narrow the lanes, it actually quells the traffic. So the thought process is, if we narrow these lanes to 12 feet, we should slow down the actual speed limit of Continental. So again, if you come out of Paramus, you go through Fifth Avenue, where the light is, you start coming down the hill, you're accelerating. Right now there's a sign there that starts flashing. Slow down, it gives you the speed limit. By the time you get there, though, you're at the bottom of the hill. So the idea is to go from Millbrook and start the quelling air, and if this does work, we're actually going to extend it further west up to Fifth Avenue before the hill actually.
so there'll be some white lines basically off the curb.
Yellow lines, white lines,
Okay.
Stripe parking. Again, phase one to see whether it works. If it does work, phase two would actually be then to start putting in hardscape and narrow this even more. Put in the curbs and narrow this roadway.
Mr. Gibbons?
Good for now.
Ms. Boland?
No questions right now.
Mr. Grasso? No questions. Sir?
It looks like the drawings we received pretty much reflect the revisions that you discussed with the entrance out onto Continental and all. Site drainage-wise, you mentioned that all the surface runoff is going into the stream or the creek. And the reason I ask that is at the October hearing, there was some discussion about water table. And I think that people were presuming that subsurface discharge would affect the groundwater. So basically what I'm asking is, you've addressed that by taking all that surface water and routing it into the existing.
No. Again, there's going to be stormwater management. There has to be stormwater management. If you do an addition in this town, whether it's 100 square feet, 500 square feet, knock it down, put a new one up, everybody puts in seepage pits at this point, whether they're infiltrators, whether they're concrete seepage pits. Anybody that knows me for the past 5 years probably wants to kill me, but we make them do this. So obviously, 6,000 square feet, and granted, most of this, where the building is paved right now. But there is some removal of impervious area that's going to be green, but there is going to be an increase in impervious, so we have to manage the stormwater. So we're going to have to do that. But this is not going to affect the amount of residents within proximity to this, it's not gonna affect their ground.
All right. I didn't see any seepage pit indications on the drawings. You're mentioning that you're also gonna have seepage pits or subsurface drainage. I didn't
Yeah.
see it on the drawings.
Right now, Mr. Mervin, this parking lot, as you know, everything slopes from Elm towards the ditch.
Mhm.
Actually, there's two catch basins in the corners of the current parking lot. So once we build this building, this proposed building, we're creating almost a dam.
Correct.
So everything is coming there. But the idea was to match the finished floor of the proposed building to the finished floor of the library. Obviously, if we could lift this up probably close to 1.5 to 2 foot, you'd have to reconstruct this and then get the drainage to come out onto Elm. But that wouldn't be practical because you couldn't have the two finished floors match.
Mhm.
So by doing so, this building, like I said, creates almost a dam. You have to get the water away from the building and then get it around the building.
All right. So I see what you're doing on your drainage plan. You're routing that around the building and into the stream.
And into the existing, there's existing infrastructure there now.
Correct.
That we're gonna tie back into.
All right. And when I look, I don't see any of your stormwater management for the new parking on the north side.
If it's not there, then it's possible it didn't get figured out for some reason, but it absolutely will be there.
Okay. All right.
And I'll put that on the record tonight, I put that on the record at the council meeting, absolutely. There will be no increase in runoff, there'll be a decrease in runoff. when this
Right.
project-
All right. I got a question on your drawing number 7. You have a note. I just would like to hear the explanation of that.
Rob, you want to use mine?
Is that-
I can read it to you.
Sure, go right ahead.
The note is right above the title box. I'll let him get his glasses. It says, "This project is exempt from soil decompaction, remediation, and testing as it is located in an urban redevelopment area." When did this site become an urban redevelopment area?
Well, under the state regulations, this is what's called the planning area 1. That's what that note means, nothing more, nothing less. We're not in the highlands, we're not in the Pinelands. So this, Governor McGreevey, many, many years ago, designated certain areas in New Jersey. This would be planning area number 1, which would be urban development. That's all that means, nothing more, nothing less.
So nobody had to officially name or go through a process of an urban redevelopment area?
No.
Okay, is a designation?
If you remember with Governor McGreevey,
Yep,
it was the red light, the green light, and there was no caution. So it was either
yes.
red, no development, or green. We're actually in the green area. And the idea was to stop building in the Pinelands, stop building
Mm-hmm,
in the Highlands, in order to push redevelopment back into the cities. So cities like Jersey City, Hoboken, I can continue, but actually Bergen County became planning area number 1, and that actually, some of the restrictions, a lot of the restrictions that were in those areas are not in our area. Then subsequently, we got into C1 waterways and 300-foot buffers
Right.
and all of that. But that's all that means, nothing more.
Okay.
There's going to have to be soil testing, and obviously
No,
the
I
architecture.
recognize that.
Right.
It just, to me, was a new term. When you say redevelopment,
There's-
planning ears go up.
Right, that's all that means.
Okay. You mentioned it, and I noticed that you are accommodating the ambulance parking, basically where it is currently.
Nothing changes.
Okay, and that's what I want to hear. And you have a curb across there, so that area is totally isolated,
Completely.
completely. So in essence, and there is signage there now that says that it's reserved for the ambulance.
There's 6 spaces there that say ambulance parking only,
Correct.
but still, it's obviously it's part
Okay.
of the overall lot that exists today. Based on the discussions at the first council meeting, the concern was there was going to be no ingress or egress on the Continental.
Mhm.
Obviously, that's not part of the proposal, so that's changed. This was completely cut off at the ambulance court. Anybody that was on the ambulance court would have to come off of Elm
Mhm.
into the parking lot, navigate into the parking lot, find a parking space,
You wasted time.
jump over
here.
the curb.
Yeah.
That's completely out.
Yeah, makes
Thought
sense.
process was, if we had to do that, could we create parking on the ambulance corps site?
Right.
I met out there, to look at it. Quite frankly, you'd have to take down trees, create a lot of cost in order to do it. So the thought process was eliminate that completely, separate the ambulance corps out, give them the 6 spots that they're accustomed to, keep it completely separated from the general public, and move on. So that would only be for ambulance corps.
I understand that, and that's good. Follow-up question, is that the only reserved parking for this project?
Yes.
Okay.
Everything else will be open to the public.
There is no other reserved parking?
Well, handicap, I mean.
Well, yeah, besides, that's by law. Yeah, okay. All right,
And again,
that's important.
The difference between some of the earlier versions and this version, again, is ingress and egress onto Continental. There was talk, should we make lefts, rights, don't take it, again. I don't want to take any thunder away from Mr. Klein, but the bigger thing is that we created a drop-off for the bus.
Mhm.
It also created an ingress off of Continental, so the senior bus can come in off of Continental,
Right.
make a right, come in, again, not in front of the building, you'll hear testimony from the architect, because actually, the front of the building faces Elm, but again, there'll be a walkway for the drop-off,
Right.
and then ultimately come in, up a ramp, and into the building
Right.
for seniors,
Right.
or
Okay.
anybody for that matter.
Now, can you turn your hat 90 degrees and put it in the planner portion?
Go right ahead.
Okay. This is basically for record purposes. As a planner, do you see this project as being inherently beneficial for public use?
Well, inherently beneficial falls under a different terminology under the statute. Just for the board and for the public. Inherently beneficial based on case law, a hospital, inherently beneficial. The sewage treatment plant, inherently beneficial.
Firehouse.
I'm not sure a community center falls under inherently beneficial use. I don't think it does.
Do you have an opinion on it?
My opinion is consistent with Mr. Costa's. I don't see that this is inherently
Use,
beneficial
okay.
use.
Okay.
But maybe Mr. Behrens is probably the best professional here this
I
evening.
concur. I'm not sure that it rises to that level of if it's
All right.
a hospital or a school, that sort of thing. It's certainly a benefit to the community, but in terms of the municipal land use law, I'm not sure it rises
No.
to that level.
I mean, if they were going to erect a statue of myself in front of me.
Automatic, right. Okay, it was just a question. Yeah, that's what I have for now. I did obviously attend the public hearing, and I heard many of the concerns of the attendees, and I do want to say that I'm very pleased to see this project moving along, because it's been a long, long time since, in the whole process, the thought.
It's not hours, it's not days, it's not months.
It's decades.
years.
It's
It could be
decades.
decades.
Yeah, it could be decades.
One thing I just want to put on the record, it's not shown on these drawings as of yet, and again, because I'm here tonight, and I really don't want to take the thunder away from Mr. Burns, because this board, almost every resolution that's passed, they have Mr. Burns look at landscape, look very closely at landscaping and work with any developer for landscaping. And again, I think the same should be done here. I mean, I have people in my office that could do the same. I might not be as talented as some of the other individuals, but I'll put this on the record. I said at the council meeting, I know this absolutely affects you. The other thought is we're going to build a berm on Elm Avenue and landscape that to limit headlights, try to limit any impact to the neighbors across the street on Elm. So it's not shown here, But prior to this going out
So
to bid,
what
this
you're
actually-
saying, in design development of the final construction drawings,
Correct.
these will be
I think
incorporated?
a recommendation from this board back to the mayor and council would be for Mr. Barron's to look at this and then collectively come up with a design for that berm and that landscape.
Who is physically going to design the landscaping? Who's going to be the designer of the landscaping? Your office, and Mr. Barron's reviews it, or vice?
We'll work together, or,
Okay.
and again, I think if you look at the 7-Eleven at the south end of town, well, I mean, I think, again,
Yeah.
whether you like the use or you don't like the use, I think it's an attractive site. As far as what we had there, and when, we had a lot more than we ever did there. We did.
No, I'm familiar with the
That's what I'm
project.
saying, I think we put a lot of landscaping, we
Yeah.
put a rain garden there, we
Right.
put a clock on the corner. Forget about the use if you don't like it, but I think we did a lot with what we had, and it wasn't a clean slate. It wasn't a clean canvas. And I think what was there, and what we did there, I think absolutely did something for that.
All right, so,
And I think this gentleman has enough talent that we can absolutely do the same thing.
all right. Yeah, well, I agree with the berm concept for headlights, yeah. All right, right now, that's all I have for Mr. Costa.
Mr. Castle.
Just confirm, there's no changes to on-street parking, on either Continental or Elm, there'll be no
I
on-street?
mean, there'll be changes, but again, it'll be striped, it'll be, right now it's not striped.
Right.
So it'll be striped, where you'll park within the stripes, but again, the only reason being is we want to narrow these lanes. Put a white stripe for the parking, put the double yellow, and make these lanes a little bit narrower to try to slow down the speed limit on Congress.
Okay, and then what about for Elm, is there any proposal?
No proposal for Elm.
Okay.
So you're talking traffic calming.
Traffic calming, but again, phase one, to see whether or not, this will be phase one, study it, see if it works, and if it works that well, then hardscape will be, again, if the mayor and council budgets it, puts it in, then the curbs, similar to what's going on in Oradell, on Kinnickinnick Road, where they tried to calm the traffic through the middle of town. And again, if anybody's here, I know we, for the most part, we all live here. Continental it's busy, it's beyond busy lately. And I think we need to do something. Being that wide, the speed limit there is not 25 miles an hour. The majority is probably 35 or better, depending on the time of day. Absolutely. I think we need to do something. And, you know, I could say this on the record, I come over the hill, if you're not paying attention, once you start accelerating down the hill, then you see the sign, then you slow up. But, and I'm sure I'm not the only person in this room tonight that probably has the same experience. Maybe not you, Mr. Chairman, but
I was gonna say, I think you are the only one, Rob. Mr. Craig.
Yeah, on the same subject, you mentioned that you were concerned obviously about children crossing the street
Yes.
from Memorial. Is there anything anticipating an increase in that foot traffic, or is it just, it's heightening the concern?
again, we can probably throw this to Mr. Klein. The idea was to put some sort of barricade, a fence, landscaping, and to cut off any access. So that basically, I guess the kids, the way the park is set up, you have the pathway on the easterly side, and you go diagonally across the street, obviously because it's simple. You're not going to go to the corner to go to the library. I say this often. If you go to the mall, you can almost get into a fist fight at the mall because people try to get the closest space to the front of the mall. Yet they'll get in the mall and they'll walk for an hour. I mean, I don't understand it. I go to Crunch Gym in Paramus. You can have a fight in the parking lot because they want the closest space to the front door, and then these people will go on an elliptical machine, a rowing machine, a Stairmaster, a treadmill for half an hour. But for whatever reason, that car needs to be the closest to the front door. But this is the human mentality. I don't think you're going to stop it. I don't think there's anything you can do to stop it. So that's why I think we flipped it around and said, okay, you're never going to stop this situation. But what we can do is try to at least slow the vehicles down where hopefully you don't have an issue with somebody getting hurt. So that's step one. Because
Right, I think that's why-
absolutely don't think you can stop somebody from crossing that point.
And I guess that's what I'm saying, the situation already exists, this is just an opportunity to try to address it.
Correct.
You mentioned that's the southbound side of Continental Avenue, no parking.
No parking on this street. And the only reason being, there's just not enough room. Even though Continental is wide enough, you can't get an 8-foot parking space, a 12-foot lane going west, 12-foot lane going east, and then have another 8-foot parking. So, if you want to do this, and do it striping, you just don't have the room there. And the thought is, we don't want to widen the roadway at this point on the southerly side or on the northerly side. So that's what you're left with. So you'll have parking on the north side, no parking on the south side, which again works with an ingress and egress because you'll have no site issues coming out of the driveways. And again, this could work. If it doesn't work, it's not going to be done with thermoplastic, it's going to be done with paint. We black out the paint and we go back to what we did. So, not a big money to spend, just to see if it works. And if it works, then I'm sure I'm not going to get a pat on the back, but maybe we will, and then that's it. And we're going to get a statue.
Mr. Sedaris, good? Tom?
Well, you want to go over the master plan stuff now, or just commenting on it?
Why don't we wait to say that for the end?
And,
Okay, do you have anything for Rob now?
No, very good, thank you.
Okay. All right, so at this point, I'm going to open the meeting, entertain a motion to open the meeting to the public. Have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstained? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go row by row, and if you have any comments or questions for Mr. Costa on specifically what he's testified to, you are welcome to make those comments. Do I have anybody in the first row? Please come up, stand up, state your name, address. Name and address. I'm sorry, I can't hear you. And I'm just gonna, I'm deaf. So I need you to speak up when you, because I truly am.
Diane Pinto, 790 Elm Avenue.
790 Elm Avenue.
The farmer's market is in there, so we're not going to have a farmer's market anymore.
Why should we? Why can't we?
Because what I'm saying is, because we park on the south side, because it's easy. That means everybody's going to be crossing the Continental from the north side.
No, this, again, you're going to have, once the building is gone, there'll be more parking here.
But
than
they're
there is
in the
right now.
parking lot.
In the parking lot.
But they are in the parking lot. It keeps shrinking, but I'm saying what is there is in that.
They're going to maintain the parking lot, and you're going to have parking in the parking lot. So you're going to have to cross the street.
And then if there's functions going on, like a lot of the towns, they'll let you park on both. Say there's something going on in Memorial Park, so then they allow you to park on the north and the south, and people are coming from all over.
Right, but you're going to have a lot more parking in this lot.
But we're gonna have a lot more people too, once the buildings are done in the south end of town. So they're all gonna be driving up here.
We will let them here.
Oh,
I'm not going to let them here. No, I'm teasing.
No,
There's going to be a lot more,
that's why-
there's going to be a lot more parking here. There's going to be more, again, and we could, if there's a huge event,
That's what I'm saying.
but there'll be police you know, if there's a large event,
Like Fourth of July, you have a big thing on Fourth of July.
that's it. Let the police,
Mhm.
they're right next door. They will handle this. If there's a large event, it's not going to just be haphazard. It'll work the same way. It's actually going to work better because there's going to be more parking in this lot. Remember, the building is going to be gone.
Okay, well, let's say, the other question is, on Timmicamac, by Kenny, you at rush hour, you can't, the cars can't get out from the school, we can't get out, and the traffic's backed all the way down to the diner, past the diner. Is that gonna happen because the people will be coming out on Continental trying to make a left? Think about what rush hour is now on Continental. I go right and then down to Bedford.
Can you connect, right now, can you connect, I don't have the latest, there was some question. This is 6,000 square feet, and I say this tongue in cheek, I've done closets bigger than this in Alpine, New Jersey. This is not gonna bring in the masses. This isn't like where you're building a Walmart, and again,
But we are having the mass that goes to ends now.
Kennecomack Road, if nothing happens in this community, the traffic between Main Street and River Edge Road is probably close to 35,000 cars per day. If we do nothing, it's going to be 35,000 cars per day. If Oradell builds, Montvale builds, if Park Ridge builds, if Westwood builds, any of the above, that's going to increase. This project is not going to, this is not going to be a destination.
No, it's going to be a destination at the corner of Continental and Timberland, as it is now, 5 o'clock.
Can I'm sorry, can I ask you just to save this question for our engineer, our traffic engineer?
Okay.
Because he's more versed on the, and I can see Rob's getting a little flustered.
I'm really,
No, I personally don't think this is going to, it's not a destination.
So we have a professional engineer that does nothing but traffic. I promise you'll have an opportunity to ask him the same questions again.
comes out at 4:30.
Well,
That
again,
wasn't going to cause any problem.
we'll let him address that, and then you can ask him those questions about traffic. Anybody else on the second row? Oh, I'm sorry, first row still? Go ahead.
Hi, Kathy Bounds, 753 Summit Avenue. Just a few quick things. Why couldn't you make a crosswalk from the park over to that parking lot? Did you think about that?
Well, what happens, when you do what's called mid-block crosswalks, they're discouraged.
You mean like the one on Kennecomack Road?
Discouraged.
Fine.
Yes, and again, I can pass the baton over to the traffic expert, but for the most part, you want to have the crosswalks at the intersections, at the corners of the intersections, and not what's called mid-block. And again, we thought about this for a while. Could you do the bump outs? Could you quell this? Could you do something more? The other issue is you have roughly 4,000 cars per day, so you can't even do what's called speed bumps. Not a speed bump, it's called a speed table, because there's too much traffic. If you could do that, then you could possibly put that there, but you cannot, it's not recommended to put a mid-block crosswalk.
Just in line with that, don't they do speed bumps? Because I lived in town long enough and made suggestions for speed bumps and was told that snowplows can't address the speed bumps. But there are rubber ones that are removable.
There are.
Something to think about when the 4th of July happens or Memorial Day, or, when there might be increased. I don't know. Okay, that's what. And then the memorial, where that's staying, right?
Of course.
Nothing's
gonna.
Where is that on? Because I can't see anywhere.
Right there.
Oh, I see. That's off.
Yes.
Oh, I see.
This basically, the edge of this parking lot is where the edge of the slope is for the American Legion.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So,
And then another thought on Continental, wouldn't be wise to restrict it to right turn only egressing on Continental? Okay.
Kathy, this is why Lee is here.
Okay.
He's here, he's getting paid, let him do something.
Oh, yeah, right, okay. And then the other thing is, of course, the trees. How did we make out with the trees from the last
The
meeting?
trees, I mean, I was quoted in the newspaper, take all the trees down.
I didn't read that. I read that the other meeting, and it is very
Are there going to be
pretty.
trees that are going to come down? Yes.
How
Yes.
many?
That was on here.
Did we go down to 16 or something?
Yeah, I think it was a lot. And then we're going to work very closely with Shade Tree.
Are they down here? Arborists? No.
No, but I spoke to Liz last week. We were actually going to meet there on Sunday, and she was walking her dog in one direction, and I had my son's dog going the other direction. I said, if you want to meet, let's go now. We have the dogs with us. But she said, no, I'll call you. I will work. I said, Liz, I can work with you. I worked with you for a lot of years. We will work very closely with them.
Because it's very nice there, and doesn't that do something for the water? Keep trees.
It does.
Really, right?
We need the trees there.
Yeah.
It's obvious. We're not going to make this a desert. I mean, it needs to get, the key is this. There's going to be impact. I can't get up here tonight and say this will have no impact on anybody. Hopefully, it'll be a positive impact, and whatever hesitations, whatever there are, we'll try to do the best we can to minimize
No, I
any
like
impact.
the idea of the
any
building, I
impact.
do. I'm sorry to see the Legion come down, I love that building, but,
I mean, there's a lot of,
Yeah.
a lot of old times in the Legion,
Yeah.
no question about
I
it.
had 2 birthdays there myself.
oh, grad parties, I've had, at the Lions Club,
Yeah.
the breakfast, yeah,
Yeah,
you have,
I know.
So, okay, so
So they
you
threw
will.
me out. I mean, they took me off sausage years ago.
Well, that's all over with now. So you're gonna do left turn and then sing. Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please stand up, say your name and address, please.
Rosemary Garcia, 242 Web Ave. Question 1, is there any way you can change the entrance to not face Elm and to actually face the larger parking lot? So the parking spots can be more for the library instead of the community center, like maybe people would come in and go up the hill to enter? Because I feel that you're taking away a lot of spots from the library from people who want to either pick up a book, get a fax sent, print something, have something notarized, and they'll park on Elm, they'll park on Tenny, they'll park on Adams, instead of pulling in and parking all the way back by Continental or having to go up that way. Is that set in stone as being the main entrance, facing
Well, there's gonna be,
Elm?
there's gonna be 2 entrances. There's gonna be 14 parking spaces, but obviously for the library.
Well, my concern is if the
You're saying
entrance
close-
to the
close this
community
off?
meeting area is on Elm, they're gonna come in and park where really people wanting to go to the library. Is it possible to move the entrance so people will be like, oh, let's go up the hill here and park up there? This way it just leaves it for the library, because I work at the library, and people, when they're running in, they'll park right in front. They'll double park sometimes, because they don't want to even pull in the parking lot. So I'm just wondering if that's an issue that could be, one, addressed.
90 degrees.
Also, so that's one thing. Or just, move the main entrance up here. Please
Here's the
enter
good news,
the north entrance instead of,
for me anyway. This is an architectural question.
okay, good. All right. Well, as far as the parking lot, I agree with parking. And I am also concerned about the water runoff and the drain, but my other question is the berm you were talking about putting up currently now when you leave the library in the front, this beautiful landscaping, but you have to pull out pretty far to see if anyone is coming. So I'm concerned to put the berm up, because there's so many children and bikes and scooters and,
We're not gonna impact side triangle.
so the berm is not be high enough where you can see,
Or press back, it'll be pushed back enough.
that you'll be able to pull out enough before the sidewalk to see what's
Again,
coming.
basically side triangles, you take 15 feet, take the curb line, come back 15 feet. The eye level is roughly 3.5 feet off the ground.
Okay, so you'll be able to pull,
And you're supposed to see an object 2.5 feet off of that lane, that distance. So in this case, I mean, I used to know these numbers when I was younger, probably 175 feet.
Yeah, 200.
Roughly.
okay, so you'll be able to see, okay.
Again, what is going to be designed, otherwise,
I just know there's,
I have to re-up my
after
insurance.
school and in the
get my
morning,
return, so I don't want that.
there's tons of traffic. All right.
Thank you. I'll go to the second row, sir. Gentlemen?
I'm not sure if this is the right time to ask, 736 Elm Avenue, Aldous Chicalis.
I'm sorry, what was your name?
Aldous Chicalis.
Okay.
In last meeting, there was considerable opposition to the project in general. People said that it's a quite small building, and it's not really practical for things like children's day camp during summertime and bigger events. We already have room in a library which serves as little community center there. Is project proceeding? Are we still considering that maybe it's not a good?
All right, so your questions should be strictly posed on what Mr. Costa has testified on. We're not here tonight to decide whether it's a good idea or not. That would have to go back to the mayor and council at one of the future meetings, once this is
We'll have
done.
another meeting to discuss this.
I believe so, but after we give our recommendation, they'll have to act on that.
Thank you.
Here's, maybe the attorney said it in the opening statement, but under the municipal land use law, because it's a capital improvement and it's the town doing this, It's required to come to this board to present and then have them make recommendations. That's required. What the attorney failed to say was, even if this board hates it, doesn't like it, this is wrong, that's wrong, and will make that recommendation to the council, quite frankly, it means nothing. It's up to the council. So any of those concerns you have, this really isn't the purview.
Well, I kind of did say it in the beginning. What I said was that this board is not here to approve or to deny this. That's not this board's function. They have no authority. So I did say that very early on. The board is simply here to hear the presentation and to make recommendations to the governing body. That's the board's sole function. Toward the end, I assume we're going to hear from Mr. Barron. He's the planner. He may have some comments with respect to the master plan. And those comments, if the board adopts them, will make their way back to the governing body.
It's kind of like the way things work with my wife.
Do I have anybody, sir?
I'm Ron Sylvester, captain of the ambulance. We just want to thank you for thinking about us with the parking lot.
I didn't need you one there, my friend. I heard about it clear.
Next row, would be the third row. Anybody?
Yes, Jim Callahan, 200 Continental Avenue, in regards to the parking lot and the water runoff. Dumping it into the ditch, is that going to create a problem down towards Webb, where the park is low and it takes on a lot of water already? Is there any thought as to putting a seepage tank where all that property is right there?
Yes. Everything. And again, a lot of people in this, I'm a big proponent, obviously, of seepage business.
Absolutely.
I need police protection for the most part in town. But it's working. I mean, honestly, some of the storms that we've had recently, there's a lot of seepage pits in this right now. All of
You
the
drive down,
knockdowns.
you see them all dumping out onto the street, you see the frozen water and everything.
That is a different situation, and quite frankly, we just talked about that at length at the sewer meeting last week, that we're gonna start coming up with a list, because obviously this is an issue. The Brisky, Elm, certain areas, but
How many parking spots in that lot?
14 to the library, total of 72 parking spaces.
And the square footage of all the asphalt? Similar?
Off the top of my head, I do not know. I
And
think
the cultural building is staying
Yes.
as is, just landscape and
as what you see today, what you'll see tomorrow.
I agree. Fourth row. Anybody?
I'm Kenny Lehman, 190 Tenny Avenue. First land use board meeting ever.
Welcome, sir.
So, just to clarify, every question tonight will be directed towards what we've discussed, right? Nothing else, like you had mentioned.
Correct, yes.
No, that's
To-
fine. Quick question, and I was trying to listen, get everything in. There was a mention about the use of funds, or at the beginning comments of the meeting, and how the use of those funds is, I guess, some way determined by the board, or is that not true? No.
Let me
It sounded like there was a mix of public funds and something else. I didn't quite get that.
I don't know if you heard me. If you want to step forward,
Yeah, come on up.
why don't you come up? This was basically just to give the board an overview as to what their function is. There's a section of a statute that we call the municipal land use law. And what that law says, a particular section of that law says, is that when a governing body or a municipality expends public funds, and when a board, and this board being one of those boards, is charged with creating or weighing in on a portion of the master plan. So master plan is basically, Tom, maybe you can help me with this, it's basically the goals and objectives for a community, and you may be able to explain it better.
It's intended to provide the policy of the borough in terms of how development is supposed to occur. And so it does talk specifically about this property, about libraries, and about community facilities in general, which I'll talk about a little bit more. But yeah, essentially it does establish the policy by which the land use board looks to, and also the governing body.
So you provide guidance, but you don't have any control over the purse strings.
Right, so basically when the municipality spends money, And because this board is involved with the master plan, reexamination, and the like, the law says, listen, we're going to have the board review these capital projects and make review and recommendations in conjunction with the master plan that you'll hear more about. However, board, you have no authority. You have no authority. This is an informal review. You can't approve it. You can't deny it. All you can do is hear it informally, and if you have recommendations, make those recommendations. Those recommendations are made, they go back to the governing body, they may accept them, they may reject them, they may accept some, reject some. That's the reality of what is involved here.
Yeah. Okay, so next question is, I know you've answered a couple questions on drainage. So I just want to discuss that again, because again, I live on the corner of Tenny and Elm, all right, and if you've been on Tenny and Elm, or if you've been on Tenny at all in the last week or so, especially during some of the rather colder days, you'll notice there's been a ton of ice on the side of our block because we all have, drainage that comes out onto the street from everybody has a sump pump. So the water table is a big concern on our block. I just don't know how seepage pits necessarily work, but I'm gathering if that collects water in the ground, okay, is there any possibility that's going to add to the water table? And will an increase in the water table create a more likelihood of there being deadness in my basement, of which there is none right now?
I'll put on the record. Basically, as you get further away, what happens, if you have a seepage pit in a location, picks up the roof water or whatever, parking lot water, there's something called you can do a mounding analysis. And basically, it's almost like a bell curve, I guess you could call it. So where the seepage pit is, the water table will mound higher. And as you get further away from it, it actually goes down to, not to zero, but obviously, you can't even discriminate what's going on today to them. So, and as you're going away, you're not talking thousands of feet away, you're talking tens of feet, hundreds of feet maximum. It'll go basically to nothing. Think about the amount of drainage going into the Hackensack River. 6,000 square feet in this parking lot is not going to impact the level of the water there. You couldn't even discern any difference. And again, as far as what's going on, and again, I understand. Zabriskie, what you're talking about, last week, 1 degree temperatures, 10 degree temperatures for a few days. It's crazy. I actually got up and I said to my wife, why am I living here? I don't belong here. I don't not belong here. But to make a very long story short, it's an issue. DPW knows it's an issue. I've gotten complaints. People are calling my office, calling DPW, calling the town. We actually discussed it at length last Wednesday morning to come up with a list to go back to the mayor accounts and say, start hitting these things. How do we accomplish it? Because people have sump pumps. People have roof leaders. They're discharging whether overground on their property, into the street, and it's creating serious issues. So let's put in some small pipes, connect it, have residents connect into it, and try to eliminate this. So we're going to come up with, hopefully, a solution and some funding to start. Not saying everyone is going to get done in one season, but this is a thought. It was discussed at last Wednesday morning. And you're more than welcome to come to those meetings. Send an email to Alan, send an email to the mayor, send an email, trying to think who the liaison, it might be Tom, Councilman Tom, and anybody's invited there. But that really has nothing to do, that's a borough issue, not a planning board issue.
So the water that will be collected in the sewage pits will impact the water at all in the creek?
Yeah.
For the trees, I know you mentioned that you're going to move, will you be marking the trees?
Yes.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Mark where, just go across the street?
What I've discussed with the governing body recently is let's put in some marks at the field so that the public can actually see where the limits of this would be and where the limits of the building would be. So people can get an idea in the field, the layperson maybe they can look at this and understand it, but until you physically see where it is in the field, you get a better understanding.
And even if you put those limits, okay, you had mentioned in one of the earlier meetings that if you cut too close to a tree line, like within the, I guess, the canopy line, that you might lose that tree. So will you be able to determine which trees might be lost, even if your limit line is not up to that tree itself? So, just so I can know when I walk across the street, how will I know which trees are marked for that and which ones are?
I will work with, like I said, I'll work with Shade Tree, we'll mark this out. She will put ribbons around the trees. If you want to meet us, you're more than welcome to call my office, and we'll do this, and we'll try to do it within the next couple of weeks. Because again, you're one of the most effective, there's no question. I mean, you've been in every meeting, and I think you deserve to see what is going to go on there, obviously, in the entire community to see what's going to go on there, to get a proper understanding. But I think where this was in the beginning to where it is now, I think it's night and day.
I
understand. I do understand.
The process of putting this out to bid eventually, does that have anything to do with this board?
Nothing to do with this board.
Okay, I'm done, thank you.
Thank you. Last row, anybody? Mr. Bartoloni? Hopefully quiet back there.
No, like I said, I confused myself on instructions.
Do I have a motion to close this meeting, portion to the public? Second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed, any abstain? Okay. I know you're all ready to go. We're going to have the architect next?
I think so.
It's your show, Rob. Bless you. You can't get those pictures retaken, I can tell you that.
Are you backing away, Rob, for a reason?
No.
I mean, if you want me to, like.
No.
Mr. Chairman, basically, again, Kurt, I've worked with on other projects. Actually, recently, we just did some work with the county in Upper Saddle River.
Can we just get his name and address for the record?
I'll do that part, unless you want.
No, I can do it.
Kurt Verheidling, employed by DMR Architects. I'm partner and director of design, and I was in charge and oversaw development of this project.
Very good. Welcome.
Thank you. Okay, so following up on what Rob had described on in terms of the building siting and the location, the proposed community center will be located on the north side of the existing library, about halfway back, set back from Elm. The main entrance to the building will face Elm Street, and I can address later on the question in terms of the parking and how we arrived at that, and in terms of the relationship of the building. And obviously, we'll take any questions as it relates to that back to the design committee and discuss that with them. But basically, what we have today is as a result of discussions with the committee and the relationship of the building to Elm Street for the confidential and the relationship to the existing library. So the main entrance is facing eastward towards Elm, and basically the existing parking lot. The building will be located in the back portion of where the existing lot is. So as you enter in, you have the entrance to the community center directly ahead. The building itself, 6,400 square feet, it's a one-story building. It has basically, as you can see here in the salmon color, are the meeting spaces. So there are, primary function of the building is for community meeting and gathering space. So there's three rooms. The largest room, which would be the community meeting room, which is approximately 2,200 square feet. And it's a multi-purpose space that is flexible, basically for any types of events, gatherings, meetings, events that will be programmed there. And that the program of this would be handled by Carolyn at the Recreation Department. I also want to add that as a result of the meeting with the mayor and council, where we had the large group, we did meet with Carolyn and go through the plan and made some adjustments to satisfy the needs within the confines of what we're able to build. Because this project, we're limited by how much we can spend for the building, and so it's been a back and forth. It's been a back and forth between how large the building can be and what the building will cost and what the borough can afford. So with Carol, reviewing it with Carolyn, we made some tweaks to the plan, and at that time to her satisfaction. So we have the large meeting room. As part of the large meeting room, there will be storage for chairs and tables. There'll be a prep kitchen, which would be enabled for different kinds of events that could be held in there in terms of small group community gatherings, senior events, things like that. But prep kitchen just being that there's no cooking or anything of that nature. It's countertop, refrigerator space, sink, things of that nature. Then in the front, right off of the main lobby, so in the main lobby, the blue area, to the right would be a medium-sized meeting room. That room would hold approximately 20 people in a kind of a conference room setting. Those tables, again, all flexible, could be easily folded up, moved to the side, stored away, and in addition, that space have a divided partition. So that partition located here would then enable that to be used for a larger group setting or to divide it into two smaller group settings. And then third would be this medium conference room.
I'm sorry, just let the siren cycle so we can hear you.
Absolutely.
One more, I think.
I believe this is the end of your was it some kind of deal?
Fine.
Yeah. Yes, it does. I don't think. Listen, like, there's too many strengths. Every shot, there's no guarantee.
Used to be 4. I know, because I used to have to run out. That's it. Thank you.
No problem.
Bye, folks.
The third medium meeting room over here on the left side as you enter off the lobby, and that's for seating flexible meeting room for 12 people. In addition, there'll be 2 offices to the left. So recreation director would occupy one, and the other would be for some other use that hasn't been exactly determined as of today. In addition, also the lobby. So the lobby will act as kind of reception area for people going to the recreation department. There'll be some seating and lounge area off to the right side. And the space is large enough to act as kind of like a pre-function breakout space from any one of the 3 meeting spaces. In addition, straight ahead, we'll propose that there'll be display cases straight ahead where things can be displayed by either local groups or schools or part of the recreation program or from the town or from the borough. The building is self-sufficient in terms of its functionality, so it can stand alone in terms of bathroom facilities and storage and support spaces. And then finally, off of the community meeting room, to the side would be, there is a covered patio area, which would be basically additional outdoor space to be used for programs in the recreation department. So that just defines the scope and the program of what we're proposing. Again, back to the orientation of the building, the design committee has decided that the presence as it relates to the existing building, the existing library, was most appropriate in this configuration. Not that it couldn't be different, but that's just where we ended up now. I do have some renderings which I can show, which I think have one here. So this rendering shows the proposed building looking from Elm to the west. So you can see in the foreground here is the existing library. In the setback is the community center. So you can start to get a sense of how the relationship of the two buildings presents themselves in terms of similarities of materials, similarities in color, similarities in the massings, and basically, since the building is raised up a little bit, it has a good presence in addition, since it is raised up about a foot and a half, plus or minus, from the parking lot. The materials and the design, really, so the design is meant to be cohesive and meant to kind of tie together and be compatible with the existing library, not to overwhelm and overpower and oversize it. So we are keeping the scale similar. The entrance, the library has a very distinct entry with the 3 arches and whatnot, and the glass element. So we are creating our own identity with the community building with this large canopy, and we have a vertical glass element in the center, and then the multi-purpose room, since it's a larger volume, that you can see in the background, and kind of taking the cue from the roof line in the library where they have that vaulted entry space. We're using similar articulation of massing in the multi-purpose rooms. It's a larger volume. So I have another rendering. Closer view looking west from the sidewalk on Elm. The existing parking lot is here. You can see the existing trees that all remain in the whole lawn area, the large growth trees between Elm and the new access driveway to the expanded parking. And you can see the context and the relationship is scale.
Okay, that's it?
That's all.
I have a quick question. HVAC, where is that?
Right. So there'll be a unit which will be located. Now this angle is a high angle, so you do see it, but we've represented in the back corner towards the rear of the building. There'll be an HVAC unit there, and that'll be sufficient to supply the entire building. So it's.
Is there any plan for screening on that or no?
We believe that it is far enough back that, from the ground level perspective, you won't see that, because it's, in terms of the distance, it's like 75. It would be located here over the restroom, so from the front,
Okay.
you wouldn't see that, and definitely from Continental, since we have a higher roof, it'd be a couple hundred feet. Yeah, 75 feet. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's not gonna be, it's only 6,000 square feet, it's not gonna be a huge mechanical.
Mhm.
mechanical unit.
Okay. I'm gonna start on my right this time. We'll give,
Um,
Michael.
Yeah, if you're out though in the Memorial Park area or towards, the tennis court, are you gonna see the mechanicals from there? Like, does it make sense to screen it from view on the other side or not?
I mean, from the tennis courts, I mean, that's,
It's all conference room space. Let me help you.
Yeah.
I think the planning board should probably recommend to the governing body that it should be screened so it'll be out of sight. Also, there's state regulation where noise has to meet a state requirement that it can only, I'm trying to think, I think it's 65 decibels at the property line. So,
this unit will not exceed that.
so it would have, I mean, 6,000 feet, how many ton of air conditioning? Maybe,
It's probably
maybe
10 or 12.
I don't even think it would be that much, but with the new energy codes and everything, with the insulation that you
But
need
we
in
can,
both.
right, I don't think we have an issue with, accommodating screening.
Okay. I was just curious if we had any.
What's that?
I was just curious if there was any. I wasn't recommending that
Well,
we
there should be, I mean, you.
You don't want to see it, of course.
If you're gonna build a new building, it should be screened
Right.
appropriately.
I guess the other question is, not knowing exactly all the uses that the community room is gonna be used for, I'm sure people will come up with reasons to use it that I haven't thought about. But just from the standpoint of, youth activities, ping pong tables and things like that, is there enough storage for that kind of stuff? 'Cause, I mean, I know you've got storage for the tables and the chairs, but if there are other things like that, would you have adequate storage?
We've met with Carolyn, and the space that we provided, she's indicated that's sufficient for the type of programming that she's envisioning for the space. So, she's the one who's gonna do the programming and, have the things that, you're talking about. That's, it's part of the extent, we provided as much storage as we could to balance, program space, storage space, so we've maximized it.
Chris? Mr. Marvin?
Yeah, once again, I did attend the October meeting, and I believe in the October meeting, there was a discussion where you made a presentation as to how you arrive at the general usage and square footage. And I think, if I recall, you said that there was a survey done and so forth. Could you just, with this board, explain?
We were not part, we did, as architects, we did not prepare a survey. I believe that the mayor and council,
Okay.
the committee may have done a survey, but that, the information in terms of how the building was developed from what the committee gave us.
So the mayor and council did a community survey and passed it on to you as
They didn't
far as...
pass on the survey to us. They passed on the program requirements.
Okay, all right. Screening-wise, instead of putting up an ugly screen, is somehow we could neutrally paint a neutral color or something, whether it's green for the background or blue for the sky, instead of putting up some kind of fencing on those HVAC units?
I mean, typically they're beige, which is,
Oh,
I mean,
all right.
and I mean,
Here's the.
I don't believe you're gonna see it.
Here's the
You'll
issue
probably see
with
the screen more than the unit.
With a flat
So I
roof
think,
and HVAC on a flat roof. If you don't build the curb high enough,
And again, understandably, you don't want to build it too high because then it's an eyesore. If you build the AC unit too low to the flat roof and the curb that it sits on is not high enough, then the issue is drainage, water. So you need to balance it. And again, I know you've been on roofs. I've certainly been on roofs more than I want to be on roofs, but again, you have to balance the two out. And again,
It's not going to be a tremendous size.
I don't think it's going to be that big of a unit.
I don't think so either. We'll make the recommendation. Just
All right, I would make the recommendation back, but again, if you don't, the bigger thing is put the right roof on the building, otherwise you have to provide umbrellas. I mean, this is
Put down the right house.
That's a sore point on those. That's basically it.
Thank you, sir.
I had a question. You were mentioning before about space where there were, for the youth to have an area to utilize this center. How many square feet is that? From what I understood it, you told Carolyn there was a certain amount of square footage that it would have for the youth of the town?
The area of the building, the area of the total building was, we had a budget that we had to had to adhere to. So we basically, and we do this on many of our projects where, you work backwards from how much you can spend to how big the building can be. So, there's people, we've heard many times that people would like a bigger building because maybe it's not large enough for the ideas and the thoughts where they think the community building should be. But our charge is to design a community building that's going to serve the community, the needs of the community, provide meeting space within the budget that the borough has. So that's what we did move around some walls. We made some of the meeting spaces bigger. I think we had maybe one storage space. Maybe we made a little smaller, that we made the meeting room larger. We made the lobby smaller, made the large meeting room bigger.
All right. I don't know if it's a question for you or it'll be more for Carolyn, but is there a devoted area that's going to be a space for like teens and youth, or it's flexible?
As far as I know, no. It's multi.
Okay.
It's going to be flexible, so she'll program the rooms for the users and the functions. So it's possible that she could end up doing that, dedicate one room for that purpose. But from the discussions that I had with her at the time, it was determined that wasn't the direction.
And there was the discussion at one point, I remember in the previous meetings, that the way it's divided up there, those walls, they're all permanent? Because I know at one point somebody had mentioned something where it could be rearranged and opened up if you had a group of something where there was going to be 100
children. We reconfigured this room to be able to accommodate the operable partition here. So this room, which is around 700 or 800 square feet, can now be broken up into two smaller meeting rooms because there's the issue or the question with if the room's too big and you only have 4 or 5 people, you're taking a whole room for a small group. So we accommodated for that in the medium size, in the large conference room.
Okay. And also, what is the material going to be that's going to be used for the outside?
It's going to be brick.
Is it going to be brick or like brick veneer or actual brick?
Brick veneer, which is it'll be a full depth brick, so it won't be a thin brick.
Is that the same that's presently on the library?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ms. Boland?
Do you have an elevation view from facing Continental, so we can see what the building looks like from Continental?
This is from the kind of northwest. This is looking from the monument.
Okay.
Looking back, so this would be the multi-purpose room, the existing memorial tree, and that plaza behind it, are here, and the new parking, and the porch covered canopy area.
I was concerned that it would be all just solid brick, but it's broken up there.
Yeah, I mean, these are the meeting rooms, so we've got the windows into the meeting rooms here, we have the porch area, so it breaks up the massing, the volume.
That's it for me.
So I have a few questions, actually, if you keep that up. So on the main meeting room, are those windows right below the roof line? Above?
No, they're not.
So the light that's coming in there is just gonna be off the covered patio and then those dark?
So in the rear, we have two full-height windows on each side of the mount. So kind of at 1/3 point, so you have the middle of the room where you can have a projection screen. And in the western area, and on the right side, we have similar two full-height windows that are open up underneath the patio area with a door that goes out to the patio.
Okay, and then what's the approximate height of that room?
This room?
Yeah.
So the total height is about 24 feet from the finished floor, 24 feet, and the inside will be in the range of 16 feet.
Okay. And then away from that, so the connection to the library, there's obviously a door connecting behind Office 2.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a door that will be accessible, or is that more of a fire exit type door?
That door is an existing door, and right now, that door will not be used between the two, from my understanding. And that's a policy issue, that's a discussion item between the library and the recreation department and the mayor and council, how it's going to connect. But there is an exit here and an exit here, and this will also be an exit, which would come through and be able to exit through the building as emergency. But it does not have to we don't need this door to go into the library for this building to function.
Yeah, I could see that actually. I mean, I guess both sides keeping the two buildings separate. But as a parent, I could see.
It's a policy discussion, you know.
Well, just to put it out there, that just, I could see it being a benefit to being able to go through both sides as a dad who could have a daughter in the library and me in some sort of event in here.
Mm-hmm.
I know that's not for you to decide, but just to put that out there. And then just one other question. I know at the October meeting there was suggested of having the main meeting room partitionable, if that's a word, just like you have the large meeting room. So if you had two decent-sized groups, that you could actually divide that room in half, and I assume that's off the table, and
that was it was determined to keep it as one large space without the library.
How big is that one room?
It's
the larger
2,200 square feet with 16-foot high. Yeah.
The room that is going to be partitioned, what's the height of that?
That'll be 9 foot ceiling. This room is 20 feet by 30 feet.
Should we use modern fold style door?
Yeah, it'll be acoustical.
Will that be partitioned? Is that going to be motorized or non-motorized?
We haven't determined that yet. It might be just manual probably.
I'd like to make that recommendation, if possible.
What's your recommendation?
That the partition doors, the modern fold doors, the room that is to be, have the option to be partitioned on the right, that it be a manual doors as opposed to motorized.
Manual instead of motorized, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, manual instead of motorized, for many reasons. A lot of people in there, some people hit the switch, not hit the switch, you gotta have keys, but also,
thinking of budgetary, they run into a lot of problems. There's a great stress, those doors are very heavy, and there's a great strain on the, on those motors, and they need a lot of upkeep, and a lot of repair, and a lot of, whereas as long as you got two hands, boom, done.
Ryan, good?
I'm good.
I just have a couple questions myself. Building obviously is gonna be sprinkled, is it gonna be hard sprinkled, or is it gonna be, is it a wet system or dry system, or?
Yeah, it'll be an NFPA 13, which is standard black pipe,
Or
wet system.
It'll be a wet system, okay. Generator, yes, no?
There is a generator.
There is a generator, okay. And the floor composite, what's the floor made of?
The finished floor?
Mm-hmm.
It'll be, in the multi-purpose room, it'll be a multi-use flooring, so it'll be...
Not carpet?
Not carpet, no. It'll be a durable, multi-purpose.
And do you know if the borough plans to use it for polling?
I do not.
Okay.
That's beyond me.
For bowling, what did you say?
Polling.
It's a good idea, bowling alley.
Polling. Bowling would be fun too. Okay. All right, Tom?
One quick one. Well, first I want to say I think you did a good job matching the building with the existing building. I think there's a nice balance there. Just a general question, I guess. Are there any sort of sustainable or green building features, being that it's a public building? I think we have such a policy here.
Right.
We'll look into that.
So when we design our buildings nowadays, the DMR has been at the forefront of designing sustainable and LEED buildings. We have 8 LEED buildings ranging from certified, actually we had the first certified school in the state, and up to gold certified buildings. So when our clients ask for us to do that, we are well adept and we do all that work in-house. So when we do projects, even as small as this, that carries over to designing, from the building envelope, the efficiency of the envelope, the mechanical system, to the lighting, to the windows. So even though it doesn't have to be a LEED project, we're based and grounded in that. So we design our projects to be as sustainable as possible.
With that in mind, are there any specific features you could put your
This
finger on?
building, really nothing special. I mean, the building envelope is really the most important thing. The roof, the roofing, you want to try to apply the roof that's highly reflective, so in the summer you're reflecting the heat. And, good quality windows for, thermal efficiency. And the mechanical system, probably the mechanical system is the biggest factor when it comes to designing, efficiency for operation.
How does I understand, it's a 6,400 square foot building. How does that rank in terms of sustainability? Is there an opportunity to bring it to the next level in a cost-effective way, or we kind of are where we are in terms of a budgetary limitation?
In terms of,
Any additional features or whatever.
I mean, really, the other things would be solar panels, which really, right now, the market and the cost and the size of the building and the amount of panels that you could fit on this building would not even probably accommodate for 1 or 2% of the usage of the building. You really need a big array of solar panels to make solar panels cost effective. And then the only other thing could be like geothermal, where they put in the pipes underground and use the water that's cooled just by the natural ground temperature. But those are things that are more expensive than we have the budget for right now.
Please keep that in mind.
Good question.
Thank you.
I understand everyone's concerned about how building new buildings, how it can be done most cost efficiently, and lowest maintenance, down and keep the operating costs down.
What appeals?
Right now, probably gonna be like a TPO's membrane roof, would be a white reflective roof.
Okay. Is that it, Tom?
Oh, that's it, that was it, that's it.
I think, okay, I'll entertain a motion open to the public.
Show me.
Okay, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstained? Okay. This is your opportunity, folks in the public, to ask the architect any, and this is specific to the building itself. Anybody on the first row, second row, first row? Go ahead, I'm sorry. Just state your name again.
242 Red Hat. If you're not going to be accessing the library through the doorway, why is it attached to the library to begin with? Why wasn't the plan to redo on the footprint of the current building that they're going to knock down? Like, why do this and cause all the trouble that seems to be causing in town? Flooding, parking.
Well, I'll let Rob talk about the flooding. I don't think there's any flooding, but the reason that the building is attached to the library is for most potential and flexibility. Having the library is a 14,000 square foot building. This is a 6,000 square foot addition. Having this building attached just gives the borough the most flexibility in terms of the buildings that and the resources of the spaces. So while the library still functions as a library, there may be some point in the future where the library uses this for some of their programming, and vice versa. Maybe the library, and we know that the way libraries get used nowadays is very different than they used to. So it's possible that the library in the future will convert to be more of a community space, in which now you have one big building that has the communicating space and connection. And it just gives the most flexibility in the future.
Okay, so but for the beginning, the door remains closed. So that's currently an exit at the far end.
That is, it is connected, and it can open into it. How the door will physically unlock or not, be locked or unlocked or allow passage is something that is not a decision or that I'm making. That's a committee and a policy decision.
I hope you can flip it in the public.
We'll take your question.
Thank you.
The library can be used by every person in town from the moment it's open to the moment it's closed. Where I feel this community center or community meeting area is only to be used for the small groups of people that will be using it at the time. So I just really feel you're taking parking away from a building that gets more use for a building that will get, not limited use, but limited people use. So that's why I'm just concerned. I think the parking will be on Kenny, it'll be down the road, it'll be, just be on the street that I guess I'll address the parking or the traffic guy, but this one is going to cause a bigger issue. So that's why just if you can flip it and people going to there will park up the hill, I'm calling up the hill, and not in the original spot. That's it. Thank you.
Second row? Third row?
John Grove, 167 Penny. I was just curious, was the cultural center ever being considered to be folded into this building?
At one point, I believe that it was. I think that the space that was requested, the dedicated space, it couldn't be accommodated in the building because of the size of the program. So the corporate center is remaining where it is.
Yeah, it seems like a missed opportunity, to have an art gallery, to draw people into that space, maybe a hallway with, the local art.
But I think there's still a possibility that they could still display
understanding, though, there's a lease with the cultural center, and they want an X amount of square feet, and obviously, you
Yeah, they want
couldn't-
dedicated space.
They want a dedicated space only for them, and certainly under the budget. You gotta remember something, because it's a assembly, it's at a higher construction value, because it's a town and you have prevailing wage and public bidding laws. This isn't like if it was a private development where you could bring in under a certain budget. So this is gonna be a little bit more expensive than if it was a private individual trying to build this center. So the costs go up because of those reasons also. And again, you had to work within a certain budget, certain money's appropriated, and still try to.
Are there any improvements to the entry to the cultural center or parking lot?
They
You wanna walk around?
They are an island, they're an island unto themselves at this point. So the cultural center, that building on the corner is gonna remain as is what it is. They have, like I said, they have a separate lease, I've never seen a copy of the lease, but they're a separate lot, and how you park there now to go there is how you will do it in the future when this is completed.
The new building is very sleek, and the cultural center is in rough shape.
Don't you, say exactly what you mean.
So, you know, it's a very sleek
Yeah.
building.
Again, I understand what you're saying, but from my understanding, that's the issue, that there is an actual lease there.
Yes, please.
Pam Logley, 112 Adams Avenue. I wanted to ask also to echo Rosemary's comments about the parking. Would you mind putting up that rendering that shows the final stuff, the entrance to the...
This one overall?
Yeah, yeah. So how many of those spaces, or would any of those parking spaces be handicapped for specifically the entrance to the community?
I can tell you,
Two.
there's two.
Two and two.
And two.
So how many regular spaces does that leave in the parking lot?
14, so you have 12.
14 is a net, no, now you're down to 10. I'm confused.
14 minus 2.
Okay.
The other two are on the opposite.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So
Yeah,
two on the other side, two that, and
14
then...
in this.
There's 14 that
Right,
are going to
and there's going to
remain.
be two handicapped.
There's
The
going to be...
library handicapped.
Right, there's two to service the library.
Right.
And again, because you have the new regulations with ADA, those will be very accessible, which means you got 88 and 24 feet in width. And then again, for the community center on the other parking lot, the proposed lot, you'll have...
Their handicaps are going to be around.
Around, yeah, on the other side.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I'm also concerned about that parking lot just filling up like that. And then people that want to use the library will have to park in the far one and walk. And there's a lot of, little kids and seniors and stuff. I'm in and out of the library many times a week, so I know how that lot fills up quickly. And I would also be concerned about the people then parking all down 10 and Elm because they can't get into that little space. Like, I would choose to park on 10 rather than park in the faraway parking lot if I was going to zip into the library. So, I would say flip it. I agree. No.
That's why she doesn't want to walk here.
Yeah, I'm too busy at the library. Can't get to the gym.
I think I'm to the fourth row. Anybody?
I'm Kenny Lehman, 190 Kenny Avenue. A quick few things, Mr. Merman, to answer your question about the survey. The survey was done in 2014 under Mayor Sandy. It was a paper survey that we left at the entrance of the library. There was exactly 54 respondents, one from Friends of the Library, one from Women's Club, 2 indiscernible, and all the rest were score related.
Okay, thank you.
You were asked at the October meeting with regards to occupancy as to how many people you could have in the building at any given time, and you have a number.
How many people? In the
Like,
entire building?
Yeah. What was
I don't have
what was the
as for the egress calculation?
No, I mean, like, if there was like an occupancy load, cannot exceed X amount
Yeah,
of people.
I can give you that. So in the maximum number of people in the meeting room would be 440 people in the large meeting room.
440 people. So that's a significant climb from the numbers that were thrown around in the October meeting, which were around 200.
You asked for the maximum number of people. The code would allow 440 people.
Would that be 440?
That's not how many people would actually use it.
Would that be like 440 people with
Standing side by side,
standing
as much as code would permit. Before the fire marshal came in, they told you you had to stop letting people.
And how many people can you have in just a large room itself?
The large room would be, I don't have that one, but I could figure it out.
How many chairs are in that picture?
20.
There's a lot more chairs. Big picture.
The large meeting.
No, this one, right here. It's 112 people.
That's, I'm sorry, what's your question?
It was a two-part question. One is, if you were to walk into this building, and you had a sign that says maximum amount of people in this building you can have,
It's by space, it's not that building. And the number that I said for the meeting room would be 440 people standing.
Just in the meeting room alone?
Yeah. By code. It's a code calculation. It's not, doesn't usually ever get to that because there's normally chairs and tables or things like that. When there's chairs and tables, then there's different numbers based on how many tables are on the chairs.
So with a room that has 112 chairs in there, some tables, and the numbers come down a bit?
Based on code, it would be maybe approximately 275 people with 112 chairs. Because you subtract the number of chairs and then the rest of the space gets divided out by what the code designates as area for a room and chair. Yeah. Again, reality, those numbers never get close to that.
Right. Last question. I don't know if this is more you or more Mr. Costa.
No.
Currently, when it snows, all the snow gets plowed to the back of the lot. Right? Where would all that snow go?
This is the good news, the global warming that we're on.
Heated asphalt parking.
Yeah. The reality is, no, the reality is, obviously, you need to plow the snow. DPW, obviously, they would be in charge of getting the snow out of that lot.
And for the record, they do a phenomenal job. I'm just wondering, where
What would
they
happen?
put the snow?
Well, again, if a parking lot, in an event, we have front-end loaders in this town. So they would, if they had to remove the snow, there's a front-end loader, there's trucks, there's dump trucks. They have the capability of taking this down right to the surface. And as you know, living in the town for a while, they do a good job. So if they need to remove it, it's gone. Just go back to your other point, though. There's no basement in this building. It's 6,000 feet. The existing building, when it was operational, it was a basement, it was a first floor, and it was an upper floor. And probably, if you took all of that square footage in the existing American Legion, you're probably very close in size to this. If not, that might even be slightly larger. I don't have that square footage in my head, but as far as the occupancy, and I think this is what Kurt was trying to say, there's reality and then there's the fire code, the occupancy, similar in this entire structure. I would say you'll never get to the occupancy in a building. Because, again, I've never seen it to date anywhere to get to that many people in that. Because normally what happens, almost what happened here the first night of the meeting here, you almost closed off the meeting because you couldn't get in this room. Hey, that was just this room, not the rest of the building. And if you had people in the rest of the building, it would have been a timeout, and you're going to go to another venue.
So I don't think this is gonna produce that many more people that could have produced in the past when the American Legion was operating, between the basement, the first floor, and the upstairs, and the events. I doubt it. And I understand,
Yeah, no, the question
I understand your
basically
point
comes
because you're
from-
there.
The question comes from, well, one, it's there, but two, the other question is there was an idea thrown around about having rainy days at summer camp, bringing all those kids over here. That's 400 kids.
I don't think you're gonna fit, I mean, reality, I don't think you're gonna fit 400 children in this place. I don't, it's not large enough. And I was there during the meetings, obviously. Reality, I do not think you're gonna get 400 kids that are in the middle of Memorial, get them across the street and get them into this building. I don't even think that's reality, quite frankly. And maybe I'm gonna get criticized tomorrow morning, maybe my phone's gonna ring from somebody, but between anybody in this room, I don't think you're gonna get that many children in 6,400 square feet. I don't see it. I could be wrong.
Block away for that.
What's that?
Maybe some school block away if you had.
Yeah, I'm saying if there was a crisis, obviously, that's a different story. But if it starts raining, I cannot see 400 kids coming across Continental to get into this building. And again, I might get criticized tomorrow morning, my phone might ring from certain individuals. Maybe a councilman, former councilman is gonna call me, but I think reality, it's not gonna happen. It's not large enough.
Thank you.
Mr. Zemenies, I see you're ready to come up.
Joe Zemke, 799 Fifth Avenue. Just two questions for you. Is that idea of switching the building even feasible based on that space? Like that suggestion, you say bring it back, but in reality, I know they talked about dedicated green lands and all this. Is that even a possibility by turning it?
It may be. It may be.
Could you turn? Of course you can turn.
Yeah, but,
No, I'm saying, could you design this and turn it the opposite way? Of course. But is it optimal? Again, well, maybe to some it is, and to some it isn't. I mean, that's the thing. It might fit your prescription, but it might not fit somebody else's. And again, this just didn't happen overnight. I wasn't involved in those meetings, but this was a while. You said decades? I don't know if it was decades. I mean, I've lived in this community for a long time.
Probably
To a point where I'm an old man.
2 years.
But I would say over 2 years. I was gonna say,
2009.
Since the borough bought that property, which was probably about 2009.
I just think the parking issue, I think, from looking at the visual, the argument makes sense as to, what the potential is to happen there. And again, living down my entire life, seeing the use that the library does get out of it, I understand. So my question was just, was it even feasible, or is it, just help now? It can't be done.
It probably could be done.
And the only other thing too that came up, you said it's just a prep kitchen. And
Yeah, right.
Was there a reason why you were not running gas for?
Yeah, well, it takes on a whole different level. A cooking kitchen needs much more space, it's very expensive, requires fire suppression, exhaust. It's being built in a much larger space, and it was just decided that they didn't want to have cooking in buildings that are warming, and prep kitchen where you could just have like catering or just light beverage snack.
Just recommendation to you folks, not to cut you off. Just recommendation to you folks from,
I think the issue is probably dollars and cents.
Right.
Build out a commercial kitchen in a building like that would probably cost you about $300,000 to $400,000, I'm thinking. So I would think it was more of a money issue than anything else. Am I right, Mr. Sedaris? You know commercial kitchens better than anybody.
I think you were on the low end.
Well, I'm a low-end kind of guy sometimes.
And systems, and so you don't want to get into that.
Any more folks in the back?
And that can't have just like a simple oven like the Legion used to have, right?
I'm sorry?
I said it can't have a simple.
The Legion had a full commercial, ovens, stoves. Yeah.
Are you looking to put
down there for the midnight snack.
That's right.
Midnight barbecue.
Well, I mean, the Legion was built, you know, many years ago, but there was a full kitchen in there. Full bar downstairs.
Mr. Bartoloni? You're a member of the public, you can speak if you wish.
Yeah, sure. Maybe I could just address some of the questions, if I can, if that's okay.
Yeah, come on.
Alphonse Bartoloni, 719 Oak Avenue. You mentioned the cultural center, and what was discussed was bringing them on board and coming into this building, and then ultimately getting rid of the existing building. But it was mentioned they wanted 2,000 square feet dedicated solely to them. Obviously, that's about a third of the building, and that couldn't happen. The hope of the council, and I can't speak for the current council, but in the past, the hope was that cultural events like, I know my son is going over there to see artwork that's being done at Roosevelt and at Cherry Hill. The hope was ultimately that those programs would be moved to the community center versus the cultural center, where I think the cultural center has about 400 square feet of total space, and if you've ever been in there to watch, see anything, you're kind of like this, and you're afraid you're going to bump into one of those columns in there. Also, the council, when they redid the recreation commission and created a recreation department, also created a cultural affairs committee. And that purpose of that committee, and I don't know if the council has gotten to actually filling that, but the purpose was to bring on people who had unique talents in the arts, all disciplines, and start promoting from within various, arts within the borough, because the cultural center is an autonomous group. They're not actually a borough organization, so they operate on their own. And as Mr. Costa mentioned, they are subject to a lease. That lease expired years ago, so if the council ever came to a decision where they wanted to pull that lease, they can with, I believe, it was 30 days notice. So, just to answer.
Mr. Bartoloni, thank you. Your testimony is always valuable to us up here. As I see nobody else in the public, and we've heard from everybody, I'm going to ask for a motion to close to the public.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstained? All right, whoop. Give me a second. At this point, it's 9:30. I'm going to ask a little indulgence with the members to get through the traffic study, but I do think we need a 5-minute recess to stretch a little bit. I'm going to ask for a motion for a 5-minute recess.
So me.
Second? All in favor? Any opposed, any abstained?
I think we all need.
I just need a drink of water.
And maybe a bathroom break.
Oh.
I'm sorry, that set you up.
I have mints if you'd like one. Yeah.
Found one more.
You're going to want more than one of those. So please, take as much as you like. Anyone else if you'd like a minute?
So what's the trick to it?
There's a thing in one of the corners.
Where I need my phone.
No, thank you.
Oh, waterfall.
We did actually look at turning the building, and one of the reasons why we didn't, one, we wanted continuity of the facades from the library to the,
So
but also,
definitely,
the way the building's lined up. But for,
Among steroid inhalers too.
have access to the bathroom.
Have asthma, but it's.
So that hallway that connects lines lines up with the library's boundaries. If you put a building, you'll lose that. So the idea was that,
Like a
let's say
mile.
there's something going on in the community center.
If I was on anybody else, it didn't help.
You could have that door open, have
It
access.
just didn't help, I know.
We
We shut
The
down.
libraries.
Yeah,
have
that's
access.
what I hear, like 3 days.
Right.
Yeah, there is, but, you know, listen, if you have a large event, you want people.
I like that. 9:40, I guess. And we are going to continue with our hearing, 9:37, on the River Edge Community Center. And we've heard testimony from both the engineer, borough engineer, and the architect, and we're about to hear from the traffic professional.
It's informal. I don't need to swear in. Do you want to get sworn in anyway?
Why not?
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your name for the record.
My name is Lee, middle initial D is in Daniel, Klein, K-L-E-I-N. I'm the principal of Klein Traffic Consulting, and I was hired by the borough to perform a traffic impact study for the proposed community center.
Thank you, Mr. Klein.
So I'm going to refer to the colored rendering of the site plan to talk a little bit about the traffic impact study. We were able to obtain traffic volumes via the speed radar detector devices on Elm Avenue and on Continental Avenue roughly in October and November of this past year. And through the several weeks of data, we were able to cull through that data to find the highest peak hours of a weekday. We avoided Halloween, we avoided Election Day, and we just looked for typical high volume numbers. And we came up with 4 different peak hours throughout a day. 7 to 9 in the morning, we came up with an 8 to 9 hour. 3 to 4 p.m., which probably picks up a lot of school traffic. 5 to 6 p.m., which probably picks up some commuter traffic. And then I chose a 7 to 8 hour to pick an hour that possibly would be time when there might be an evening event at the community center. And what I did is I summarized those traffic volumes at the intersection of Tenney and Elm and along Continental Avenue, so I can analyze the traffic coming in and out of the Continental Avenue driveway and the Elm Avenue driveway. And what I did is, in order to estimate the number of trips that would be coming in and out of here, I made an estimate based on the number of parking spaces. And as Robert said before, there were 7 or 8 or 9 different iterations, and I think one of them had a higher number at 80 or 82 parking spaces. So I chose the highest number of parking spaces. I assumed that all 82 cars would come in and come out in the same 20-minute period, which is really kind of overkill. Assuming that everybody was coming in for an event, but also those same people in the same 20-minute period would also be leaving for that event. So I did overkill sort of an analysis of in and out coming in. And as I said before, we had 4 different peak hours along the 2 main streets. And then at the driveway, we distributed the traffic in and out, left turns in, left turns out. And what we did is we came up with levels of service, acceptable levels of service C or better during all 4 of those PM peak hours. I don't know if you've heard other testimony on traffic. Levels of service go from level service A to level service F. F not necessarily being a failure, but that level service F is excessive 50, 60 seconds of delay. We ended up with acceptable levels of service C or better, with one exception. One of the peak hours we ended up with during the build condition was a level of service D, but that was just because it was just over the threshold of level service C. So we had the cutoff for level of service C is 25 seconds of average delay during that hour, and we had one time when traffic at the Continental driveway during the evening peak hour 5 to 6 would be a level of service D with 28 seconds of delay. So we're right on the border of level of service C and D. And also, again, we looked at 4 different hours of the day during the worst hour of volume I could find through those 2, 3, 4 weeks of data that was collected by the police to get me the traffic volumes. And again, levels of service, acceptable levels of service C or better, with the exception of 1 hour in the evening, 5 to 6, where there'd be it's also acceptable level service D exceeding the driveway. As Robert had said, we looked at, I think it was 8 different scenarios I looked at for the site plan. And in my report dated December 10th, I put together a little matrix that gives a summary
of the pros and cons of each of these scenarios. You have the report, it's table 1, but I can just go through it briefly. When we put the different scenarios in a matrix, and we looked at number of parking spaces, number of access driveways, that ambulance staff parking was in a separate area. We looked at two-way circulation aisles, and we looked at whether there was a pickup and drop-off area for the seniors. And so scenario number 7, which is the one we're working with, that had 73 parking spaces total, 2 means of ingress and egress, one on Continental, one on Elm. It had the separate parking area for the 6 ambulance staff. It had two-way circulation with the exception of this little area here that's a one-way circulation, but because the site distance would be good here, you know, as somebody's circulating around to try to find a parking spot, they go through here and they look for another spot, they can come back around. If somebody comes up here, as they come through, they can see whether these spots are full or not, and they can decide to go to a space, or they can go around to circulate around. And the drop-off pickup was on this scenario as well. So we chose that as our scenario to go with. It met all the criteria that we were looking for. We also looked at the site distance from Elm Avenue, the existing driveway, and from the proposed. As Robert said, there's not going to be any parking along the southern side of Continental Avenue. If there were to be parking for special events or so forth, we'd have to indicate the site triangle. We could probably put like a yellow curve along the area to indicate where that no parking zone would be. On Elm Avenue, as Robert said before, if we do add any landscaping, that would be certainly out of the site triangle, and if there was the need to remove a parking space because site distance wasn't adequate, we could certainly strike that. Just some statistics on the speed data that we had gotten. For Continental Avenue, when we look at travel speeds along a roadway, we look at the 85th percentile speed. We look at the speed that 85% of the traffic is going. And we found that the 85th percentile speed on Continental Avenue westbound was 29 miles per hour between November 1st and November 13th. And the 85th percentile speed eastbound on Continental Avenue was 33 miles per hour, that same period. So what Robert has said before is that we're looking to try to calm traffic here. So as you saw from the other diagram, we're trying to narrow the road, define the lanes. If we can put parking on one side, that is another physical means of tightening up the lanes. We can get 2 11-foot travel lanes, restripe the double yellow line, and that gives the appearance that the road is narrower and people will travel at a lower speed. And we're looking to do that in striping at first, do another speed sample. We'll get the police to put the speed collection data collectors at the same place. We'll collect another week or 2 of data, and we'll look at compare, see if we can bring it down a mile or 2. We're looking at actually eastbound to try to get much slower. It's 33 miles per hour. And then, so some of the people left, but yeah, like I said, so level of service we looked at the intersection of Elm. We also looked at Elm and Tenney. We were able to get some traffic numbers on Tenney as well. And we analyzed the intersection of Elm and Tenney. The level of service table, table number 3, as I said before, all levels of service C or better, except for that one PM peak hour at Continental level service D. Elm and Tenney would operate at acceptable levels of service A's and B's during those 4 peak hours, with the additional traffic coming out from the recreation center. Yeah, that's pretty much the highlights of the traffic study. The data that we were able to collect was, it was important that we were able to get more than just, normally when somebody comes and does a traffic study, they'll say they went and did a 2-hour count, 7 to 9 in the morning, 4 to 6 in the evening. We were able to get more data from the police because they put out the speed collectors, and we were able to get a couple of weeks of data. I was able to look through and find the highest peak hour. So I think, like I said before, we found the highest 4 hours that we find on a weekday.
the estimated that all the traffic, all the cars parked here would come in the same 20 minutes that they'd be coming out. So that's really worst case scenario, and we still end up with a full service seat.
Okay, Tom?
No questions. I'll just add a comment, I guess. Given the location of the site, it is sort of centrally located, so I would anticipate that there would be a good amount of people walking to the site, at least in decent weather. And also exiting the site, you have people going in every which direction. So, not a traffic expert, but I would assume that would alleviate some concerns about everybody funneling out in one direction, going one particular way. So I think you did a good job.
We distributed traffic sort of like about a third coming out the Elm driveway, and the other 2/3 out Continental, and then once they got onto Elm, the volumes were pretty balanced, so, half of them went that way, half of them went that way, the other half, that 2/3 split a third and third, so, yeah, it was pretty well distributed.
Thanks, Tom. Ryan?
I have a question about the one-way right by the ambulance staff parking. I could see someone driving down that direction towards one of those spots and, there being a small little car in one of those spots and having to now make a bad K-turn or now be going the opposite direction down that one way. Is there a concern that, I could see a pickup truck and a Honda Civic next to each other and you think that there's a spot. And
I see what you're saying, yeah.
So I could see people kind of then going the wrong way and making that left or backing up or trying to make a K-turn and, we think there's a concern of having that one way. I guess there's no way of making that space any bigger to allow two-way.
Right, if you do that, then you're going to remove a row of parking.
We can make that one way though.
But yeah, it is one way.
No, I'm saying all the way out, all the way to the intersection.
Make it one way that way?
Come down. No, go down.
Make this whole thing one way?
No, just here.
Instead of making this two ways. Instead of making this, just make this one way. Up to here.
Oh, that's true.
So when you come into that space, you have to make a left essentially.
Yeah.
The only thing is you can't get it like a do not enter, because it would be in the roundabout.
Right, there's no place to put that. You have to put it
Right.
straight.
We could stripe it.
Yeah, because I could just see two cars driving head first into each other down that space.
And again, the whole idea of that was try to maximize the parking and the space that we.
Right, no, I get it, I just could see.
And give the ambulance corps their dedicated.
And that's, absolutely, I could just see, cars backing out.
Yeah, I agree.
Or two cars having to, going head-on each other.
We can make an hour go, we'll make that a one-way, and then the sad reality is I have to fire somebody tomorrow morning when I get in.
No, you're not firing me, right?
Like I said before, you're talking about the perfect storm where there's a big pickup truck blocking a small Honda.
Right.
And I'm driving up thinking that there's a vacant spot there. And yeah, either I can illegally go that way when there's nobody coming, or like you said, we can try that.
No, we'll just make it.
I think we just make it, we can put a stripe here that says do not enter and just make it.
Right, and I could also see when that event is all letting out, that I now want to go out that way. Because that's a quicker route for me to go out.
I guess, in other words, if you're parked here, you're going to try to turn out and go that way?
Yep, I would. And just a point of clarification, that
You
curve.
don't go one-way street, but.
Never.
Correct.
That curve that's there, it's separating the main lot and the ambulance staff lot. Is that just a typical, however, like a 3-inch curb or whatever is a typical?
No, we actually talked about putting some shrubbery between the two, possible small cuts between to keep them.
Because I could see people hopping that curve too if they're driving it.
Absolutely.
Big SUV.
The whole idea is to keep this separated, and again, you heard earlier.
Yeah. No, and you want to keep people out of those spots, but I can see people if it's a thin curb.
No, it's definitely going to be separated. It's going to be landscape along the front and landscape between there.
Right. Okay.
And then there was talk with the governing body to put just a small fence, like a 4-foot fence.
Just something to keep people from. And then just one other question, has there been any thought of having no left turn or during, say, after school, before school hours of no left turns out of either of these ingress?
Like I said, based on volume, no.
Not
It's
needed.
based on, safety. Oddly enough, when you do a Google Street View of Continental Avenue, at least about a month ago or so, there's a police vehicle sitting here, and it looks like it's in the afternoon. So I'm just thinking that maybe the police officer sits there because he knows the kids are going to be jaywalking or cutting across the street. So it's really an enforcement thing to get the kids used to coming down, walking to the corner and crossing. It's not that long of a distance, but, you know, kids are talking, and they just sort of diagonally cut across. Here, they're going to be able to cut across and walk through the parking lot. Here, we're going to fence this off, so if they were to cut this way, they're not going to get out. They're going to have to do it this way. But it's an enforcement thing. It's educate the students at the school, tell the teachers, you know, look, guys, the speeds are here, there's volume here. You really should just make the effort to go the extra 50 on it and come to the cross.
That's it.
I'm just looking at the drop-off. I think there is an argument for rotating the entrance. I don't want to open up a can of worms, but the drop-off, I think it's just a natural tendency to want to get to the front of the building. Bad weather. So if anybody tries to get to where the entrance is now, it's going to be it's very hard to maneuver.
Well, this is really, I guess, the senior van would be told to drop off here.
Right.
Passengers, you know, could be dropped off here from people that, you know, again, if it's raining and somebody's, you know, has a crutch, they want to just get off here, they could do that. I see what you're saying, they could come around here, drop them off in the front.
And then they have to figure out how to get out of there.
I think you're going to look at that to see if there's a way to get things. Yeah.
That's just an argument for it.
Sir? Pass.
Was there any speed data collected on Elm Avenue?
Yeah, Elm, speed data on Elm. You know, I had it, but I didn't use it because we were talking about traffic calming on Continental. So I have the data, I just don't have it in my report because that wasn't part of mine. So we weren't looking at traffic calming. I think if I found speed data, it must not have been high. Okay. We got the stop sign at the end. So I think the traffic speeds must have been in the mid-20s, under 20.
That stretch of Elm seems to have a large number of people that do travel at a higher rate of speed, and because they're coming up the Continental, they seem to slow down. But my concern would be more if there's any sort of analysis with the intersection of Tenney and an increased use now with the Elm entrance. Is there any analysis done insofar as, you know, is there a need for a stop sign coming up Elm at the intersection of Tenney?
No. I mean, we looked at the volumes here. We did get speed data on Tenney. The 85th percentile speed eastbound was 26 miles an hour in late October, early November, and westbound was actually 29 miles per hour, which is odd that it's coming towards a stop sign. But those are generally acceptable. 25 miles per hour is the limit there. But no, I don't think there's a real need for any kind of a multi-way stop or anything here. As I said before, you know, right now there's 32 parking spaces, I think, for the library, so now we're probably looking at that same number of trips coming in and out, because some of them from here might decide to come out this way. So I don't think we're going to see much of an increase at this driveway. Okay. Mostly the increase will be a concrete.
I don't know if you have this information. How many more parking spots exist in total compared to what is there now?
I think it's 35 here. How many were here? It wasn't a big number. Maybe a dozen, 15.
I think there's more. Yeah, I think there's.
There's 73 in the second.
Yeah.
And I think maybe there's 60 now.
That's kind of the number I thought I had in my head from looking.
Yeah, I don't have that in my report.
Which I mean, you know, within a couple of days, that's right. Because I guess I'm just trying to get a sense of additional traffic, because if there's you know, if there's 60 parking spaces now and there's 72, we're really talking about potentially 12 more cars coming in and out at maximum.
Right, but the day that the counts that I got, I doubt there was anything more than just normal activity
Right,
at
understood.
the library,
Yeah.
so I had to add in, so again, it was more conservative.
Yeah, I'm just figuring that, you know, when you say, like, you know, how's this gonna affect traffic and wait times and everything else, if we're talking about potentially 12 more cars being in parking lot than are capable of being in parking lot now, that's
Right,
really
in the
the
existing
additional
VFW,
load.
correct, yeah, that's.
Okay.
George? Okay. While we were on break, I had an opportunity to run into traffic and safety, who indicated a bit of disappointment that they weren't included in any of the discussions with the traffic changes and so forth. So I would recommend that you reach out, Bob, you reach out to traffic and safety and maybe have a discussion with them, because I guess the changes that are going to be done on Bogut Road specifically are probably under their purview.
I mean, normally, again, I want to do that, but normally it would go to the governing body, then I think it's up to the governing body to do that, but
I'm just...
Again, I don't want to overstep.
Right, and neither do I. They did indicate a level of disappointment that they weren't consulted, so I'm just putting it out there.
May I make a suggestion? At the conclusion of this board will be making recommendations. Why don't you just include that as a recommendation? Have the governing body confer with or reach out to traffic and safety.
Okay.
And I don't mean to slight anybody, but again, I think it would go back to the governing body to say.
I explained to them that this meeting was more of a informational meeting, and they should go to the mayor and council meeting, but...
More than that, it's required by statute.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, they could certainly,
Well, Mr. Carroll is here, so I'm sure he's going to have some questions. So at that point, I'm going to make a motion, I'm going to ask for a motion open to the public.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstain? Okay, we are now open to the public. Would the first row like to go first? Yes, that would be you.
Rosemary Garcia, 242 Red Avenue. I don't 100% understand exactly what you were saying, but what I'm taking from it is the testing was done at the exit of the library.
We gathered traffic volumes
And you just got
in both
six.
directions on Elm.
Yeah.
And I got 2 or 3 weeks of data, and I looked through that data to try to find the highest 4 hours of a weekday.
No, that I understand, but so it's just the traffic going past.
And then
And enter.
right, and then I added the traffic exiting and entering, and I formed a T intersection, and I analyzed that with software.
Okay, so, and we got a six.
Correct.
I don't know if
We're in New Jersey, E and sometimes F is acceptable. So
Okay.
level service C, 25 or seconds or less of delay, trying to get out of the driveway.
I don't know if this is you answer this, or maybe traffic and safety would answer this, but does it take into account the size of the street, parking on the street, and everything, because this street is very narrow, 10 years narrow. You can't have 2 cars, can't pass on Adams. People coming to this are gonna come from Midland or coming down, they don't necessarily all come down 6th, they don't wanna go to the light, they cut down Webb, go down Millbrook, again, narrow, no sidewalk. And this has been an issue that 20 years ago was a major issue when they wanted to put the regulation-sized hockey rink in the park. You're not expanding the street. There may be more traffic, but or less traffic, but you're not putting sidewalks in, you're not, making them wider. It just seems you're gonna be increasing a lot of traffic, and you're just still not addressing the street issue or the parking issue, or as someone said earlier, people walking, and if you're walking down Millbrook to come here, there's no sidewalk, and I just don't know, is there anything you can do to make this better, or maybe if you can you have less? I mean, you can't decrease the parking or anything, but how does it address it? Is that part of the fee you got, or when you add those things into it, does it make it more of a D, you know, like, are those issues brought into this? Because that was one of the major concerns of putting another large structure in this park 20 years ago, and still doesn't seem like it's being addressed. Does your traffic survey address any of that?
Yes, our
Do
traffic.
any of it, like, you don't increase, do you recommend you make the streets wider, or you put sidewalks in, or how does it stop it on the other side of Continental and up by Fifth Avenue and Adams?
No, so all I analyzed was the site driveway with Continental and the site driveway with Elm, and like I said before, I over-exaggerated the amount of traffic volume that was coming in and out. I concentrated it in a 20-minute period. The geometry of the street is taken into account. It's a shared left through to come into the site. It's a shared through right to come into the site. So the geometry is taken into account when I do the analysis. The traffic volumes, like I said before, I found the highest 4 hours, and again, assumed that all this traffic would come out in 20 minutes and come in the same 20 minutes. So I was overly conservative when I analyzed the two driveways. So I took into account more than anything you could have imagined.
So safety-wise, really a good grade?
Absolutely, yeah. Like I said, D, even E's. I mean, what we're showing is that it's not decreasing the level of service from what's there today.
So it'll be the same?
Yes.
As opposed to what's already there?
Correct. Based on the amount of volume that's coming in and out of this for that 1 20-minute period 4 times a day.
It was at a double because it's two buildings.
Actually, I was overly conservative. If you go to the Institute of Transportation Engineers and you look up a 6,400 square foot recreation community center and a 14,605 square foot library, in the morning peak hour that generates 102 peak hour trips, and in the evening 203. I analyzed 184 trips in the morning peak hour and 184 trips in the evening peak hour, because that's the numbers I had. I doubled the ins and the outs. So again, I was overly conservative by picking the highest volumes I could find for a weekday, by using everybody coming out and in 20 minutes, which is not going to happen, because either they're going to come in 20 minutes or they're going to come out in 20 minutes. I did both. So I have people turning left in while people are trying to turn left out. So again, overly conservative in my analysis. Absolutely.
Is that it? Sir?
Kenny Lehman, 190 Penny Avenue. So yeah, I mentioned earlier, I live right on that corner, okay? I have 5 kids, 5 of 20 that live in that short span between Elm and Booger. So, part of my question here, and that's just like middle school and down, right? That's not including the older kids around the block. So, part of my question here is, on those times that you observed, were you physically there at any of those times?
No, I was there with Robert. We were there in the morning, one morning, and it was relatively quiet. It was back in October. It was relatively quiet there. I did turning movement counts here. I have to look at my notes when I was there. It was evening because it was getting dusk. And I observed the amount of cars coming in and out. I actually basically counted the movements in and out of Tenny, and then out of the library. I think it was 4 to 6 or 4 to 5 in the afternoon. They had a hearing up in this area, so I caught a couple of hours.
So the reason why I asked that is that if you had been there during after school hours, like during the after school, you probably would have noticed. And even in the morning hours when the children are going to school, there was a very large pedestrian, flow of traffic there. And does your grading system take into account any of the pedestrian traffic that's in the area?
No. When we analyzed this intersection, we analyzed the turning movements of the traffic.
So when you do your speed analysis,
maximum.
Does that grade indicate anything other than time delay? Does it indicate like anything like this is the average number of incidents that might be attributed to that time delay or that level of traffic or that speed observation?
No. I analyzed the operation of this driveway with the community center traffic coming in and out during all those 4 different hours of the day.
So I think that, not so much a question, but a level of concern here is that and as much as I appreciate the speed observation that you did and the study that you did, I think my concern would be that there's no indication as what the impact to the pedestrian, walkways would be, especially in consideration to, call it the 20 minutes to 30 minutes before school, and probably call it the hour or so after school, considering that there's a number of children that come to the library to do their schoolwork afterwards, pickups, drop-offs, kids playing, and there's going to be a lot of kids playing on that Allen Bogart area. So I just want to know, where is that taken into consideration within the traffic study?
Teddy Avenue is stop control. There's not a marked crosswalk from what I can remember. So we could recommend just striping that crosswalk, which would give a visual to the drivers that there's a crosswalk there. And, drivers that make a left turn and make a right turn are supposed to yield to pedestrians or stop for pedestrians that are in the crosswalk. What we're trying to do up here is trying to get people, children especially, to use the crosswalk at Elm and Continental. We're going to do whatever we can to get them to go in that direction, whether it's education, the kids at school, explain to them it's not safe to do this maneuver, you got to go to the corner and cross. So there are other things that can be done, but the amount of times that this is going to be used, the times of the day that it will be used, and you're trying to come up with the perfect storm of the 5 minutes that the kids are walking through this intersection is the same 5 minutes that everybody's coming in or coming out of the community center. It's just, to get that perfect storm to happen is kind of a rare occasion, I would say. And if everybody, follows the stop signs, follows the crosswalks, it should be safe. We're not on a busy, I wouldn't call these busy roads. 4,000 ADT is not a huge number. I don't even know what the ADT on Elm is, probably half that, if not maybe less. Average daily traffic.
All right,
if I lived on Tenney,
if the answer is adherence to a stop sign and the potential crosswalk, but that the other concern is education in the schools with the students because of the fact that we have a number of kids running across Continental, I think that you can't say that, with the potential crosswalk in that intersection of Tenney and Elm, and adherence to a stop sign is going to resolve that issue. Concern Continental that you can't get the intersection.
Are you saying that there's a problem today with the kids crossing and the traffic today?
I'm not saying that there's so much, I'm saying that you just have a large flow of children in the area.
Okay.
Right?
And they're there today.
And they're there
And
today.
the library is there today, and the traffic in and out of this driveway.
Yeah, but now,
And it'll be about the same because of the way that the site is configured. I'd say from here or so, these people will continue to come out here. So there'll still be 30 or so parking spaces associated with the Elm, and the rest would be the Continental. So I don't think you're going to see a noticeable difference. If you're sitting at home or if you're down Tenney and all of a sudden there's 6 cars that go by in 5 minutes, you're going to think, oh, there must be something going on at the library. But 6 cars over 5 minutes is not a big number.
okay,
It's all relative.
if you say that the traffic pattern is pretty much remains the same, all things remain the same,
Yes.
then I don't know that there's necessarily a level of concern. But unfortunately, I do work in the city during the week, so I don't get to see the school hours. I would direct more of that question to you, since you're in the area.
It's, even just pulling in and out of not so much exiting the library, just backing out of the spot, there's always kids and, parents don't necessarily watch their kids, they run in and out of the parking lot. That's why I'm also concerned, back to, keeping the library having its own spots more and not having the community center use them. Because you have a lot of parents with young children, and they hop right out and they run. We see it every day that it happens. And if they're up there and they gotta come running down, it's an issue. We live on Penny, we see people park, they don't want to pull in the library, they park in front, they park down Penny, they just run across the street, and you just get kids running around the ground doing like Pokemon Go and things like that, where they're chasing things and they'll run over here, they'll run down that. So there's a lot of pedestrian traffic there. You know, is it going to increase? I would think so, since there's a new building there, but maybe it won't be any different. You know, I don't know. This is like what you're saying, but there's a lot of traffic and foot traffic with kids, bikes, scooters, you know.
As Robert said before, the VFW that's there now, the Legion building that's there now, has activity. Well,
Had
activity. I'm sorry, had activity. I don't know how long they would close up.
It's a while.
10 years?
Oh, it's that long.
It was an activity that was like the library from 10 to 9. The cars coming in and out, you know, all the time. It was only if there's an affair that was going on.
That's what I mean, right.
You know, if there was an event. It just seems like this community center or meeting area, whatever it's being called, you know, is it going to have a same 10 to 9 aspect where cars are coming in, because now there's another person. It seems like you're going to be increasing more, you know, that stuff.
So
Like
what,
the VFW only had it when there was something going on.
again, what I would suggest is we've gone offline just a little bit because we're just an advisory board this evening. What I suggest is next mayor and council meeting, go up, say you attended the meeting, you learned this, because they're the ones that are going to make the final decisions, not us. So I just don't want to keep anybody, sir? Mr. Carroll?
Yes, Ian Carroll, 321 Wales Avenue. I'm a member of Traffic and Safety. The only plan that we saw was on Mr. Bartolone's cell phone, okay? We've heard narrowing the street. We've heard a center island down Continental Avenue. We've heard speed bumps. We've heard angled parking in front of the ambulance corps. We have no clue. We have 2 police officers assigned to traffic and safety. They attend the meetings. They are traffic officers. They're not regular police officers. They know the traffic in this town. We have no clue. We can't make a recommendation to the mayor and council because we don't know anything.
So we are going to recommend that somebody from the mayor and council reach out to traffic and safety and listen to their concerns, maybe invite them in for an informal meeting or invite them to a meeting. But I would think the traffic and safety should have something to say, considering that that's the committee that deals with traffic in the
And one
borough.
of our members is a member of the ambulance corps, and she lives on Continental Avenue. So she's got the big picture. I'm just curious, if that's Continental Avenue, where's the ambulance corps?
Parking. This is the existing, where they park now, and the ambulance corps is right across the street.
It's on the other side of the street.
Correct, yes.
I know you referred to the ambulance corps, and I was wondering, it's not the cultural center.
No, that's it, over here, yeah. Right. The ambulance corps is across the street from where we're keeping the 6 reserved parking spaces for them in that case.
We were told that the 6 parking spaces would be only for the ambulance corps, and they would be the only people exiting out onto Continental Avenue.
No.
See where the big
No,
picture
we have-
is?
we have a driveway on top.
Excuse me, with all due respect, the original meeting at the mayor and council, there was no driveway going on to Continental. After that meeting, because obviously some of the comments from the public, it was revised. Mr. Klein came in as a traffic expert, and then there was another meeting in front of the entire mayor and council, I believe.
This is the plan.
This absolutely was the plan. This plan has been sitting in Borough Hall since December. The other plan was actually discussed that night. It was there, and from my understanding, there's at least 18 copies
of this plan?
The borough hired Gary Askelis to come before us and give us all the traffic problems in town, including that street. And one of the recommendations was the angle parking and not narrowing the street, no speed bumps, etc. So we're confused, so.
I'm not sure what.
I think the angle parking, aren't you talking about Bogart Road down by the apartments?
No, I'm talking 6 angle parking spaces on Continental to the west of the ambulance driveway. They were gonna park the
When was this recent? Recent?
Thank you, Mr. Bartoloni.
It's Memorial Park, you can't touch it.
On the park side?
On the park side.
Can't touch it.
Gary Askelis came to you.
Yeah,
recently
yeah,
with
you can
another-
speak, Mr. Bartoloni, please.
Alphonse Bartoloni, 719 Oak Avenue. I was not the liaison to the Traffic and Safety Committee when that was proposed by Mr. Escalese, so I can't really speak to that. My understanding, though, was there was some discussion regarding that, but after the meetings that were held with the general public, I think it was the consensus from the ambulance corps that they did not want parking on that side of the street. They did not want parking on site, and so this was.
They're happy with what they
alternative that came
have.
up. They wanted what they had, and that was the alternative that came up. So I think one of the captains from the ambulance squad was here earlier tonight and was generally happy with that layout. So.
What was it? Maybe I'm missing something. Was that recent?
I paid them $5,000 to come, and we had 20 items of parking all around town,
Easy question.
including the center line on Kitticamas Road they wanted to move to the Continental.
No, but 3 or 4 years ago.
No, recently.
I believe Mayor Muscaratola was the mayor at the time.
All right, so the bottom line is we're gonna recommend that they contact the committee and deal with it, because we've already had testimony that there's gonna be no angle parking. There is gonna be an opportunity to try to slow down traffic on Continental. Again, however they do it, they're gonna try some different methods to try to slow it down. By the way, I do have a quick, I wanna get back to that real quick. I don't know if you ever traveled down to the Outer Banks, down Route 13. I have, many times. And I will tell you for a fact that I do 55 miles, 60 miles an hour on that highway until I get to the town that says 35 miles an hour with a little sign saying strictly enforced. Separate sign. What I suggest is the borough attach those words strictly enforced on those 2 signs. Throw some radar out there for a week or 2. Believe me, nobody will do a mile over 25.
Is that on Duck Road, by the way?
No, that's on Route 13.
Okay. Because I'm going there for a wedding, I just want to know.
You had a good time.
I have the shield in the window, I have the card in my wallet, and I still don't do over 35 miles an hour. That's what I suggest the borough try first, before they go through all these curb cuts and everything else. Strictly enforced. I'm telling you, it stands out, and the word will get out very quickly. All right, anybody else from the board have anything to ask at this point? I'll open it up to the board on any questions on anything.
You gotta close the public meeting.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Motion to close the public? So moved. Do I have a second? All in favor? Any opposed, any abstained? Okay, so I'm going to let the board ask any questions on anything that was discussed this evening. I'm going to start with Mr. Steris, noting that it's 20 after 10.
Is this really, this is shrubbery or I would make a strong recommendation in the interest of expeditious snow removal, and I'm sure the DPW guys will love this, that those be taken out completely. Anybody who plows snow in this room, you look at this and you know this is an absolute nightmare. And our guys are great, DPW guys are the best. But to get someone in here to do all these turns and twists and maneuvers with a dump truck, and with their dump trucks that are massive. I mean, I'm thinking about doing this with my pickup. It's impossible. This would be such a nightmare. Not to mention the cost of the borough, that you're going to be replacing all of this every year. Because once they salt it, it's all dead. So, you know, you're going to get messed up. Where are you pushing the snow? How are they maneuvering? People are going to run. I'd say just take it out.
Remove what? What's your
There's
recommendation?
berm there, right?
All green
Berms?
islands, all the green islands, 100%.
I think it's a great idea, Mr. Sarah. Yeah.
It's gonna be a nuisance for the plow drivers, it's gonna be a monetary burden for the town. It's gonna die every year. You wanna kill shrubs, throw salt on it. Done.
Michael?
I'm good.
Chris?
I'm good.
Sarah? Pass.
Good.
Nothing else?
Good. Okay. The board has made several recommendations tonight. I know our attorney has been diligently writing them down, so I would ask her to read them.
Some of them are expressed, some of them I took down based on the comments of the board. So if there's anything in here that does not belong, please let me know and I will put a big X through it. There was one comment, there was a recommendation that was made with regard to landscaping and a berm on site. Is that correct? The next recommendation is for the HVAC to be appropriately screened. I think it was Mr. Sedaris that made a recommendation for the partition doors to be manual in lieu of motorized. There was also a question that was raised, or really a comment regarding the parking circulation. And Mr. Costa, I'm going to need your help on how to put this in terms of a recommendation, but making it one way in the area where the ambulance corps is.
It's really, you can use the number, just do the parking spaces. Yeah. You'd say make it one way southbound from space 62 to 67.
One way southbound.
Southbound from parking space number 62, parking space number 67.
62 to 67, thank you, that's what I like, specificity. Comment was made by one of the board members with respect to the drop-off area. I believe recommendation is to ask the governing body to take a look at that again. There is also, there was a comment with regard to traffic and safety. What we're going to ask is for the governing body to reach out to traffic and safety and have a conversation with them as well. And then the last comment that I have, a recommendation I should really say, is to remove all green islands.
Yes.
Mr. Sedaris? Is there anything that I may have missed?
The strictly enforced signs on both the speed limit coming down from 5th and then the other one coming up from, say, Elm.
So strictly enforced signs on
Strictly
Elm,
enforced underneath the 25-mile-an-hour sign.
Elm and what other?
Non-continental.
And Continental.
You're talking non-continental?
Yeah, coming up from Elm.
Traveling east or traveling west on continental?
Here's what I'm going to ask, Mr. Killian. Once I've prepared these recommendations, I will forward it over to you first, if you can take a look at it, and then I will put it, ship it out to the governing body.
Perfect.
Two others. One was for them to consider the rotation of the building 90 degrees for the parking access for the library. And then I think there was a recommendation to strike the Tenny crosswalk.
I don't think you can do the tennis courts, can you, Mr. Costa?
Can you crosswalk across 10? Absolutely, yeah. It's just
You
not
can,
marked right now.
all right. It's not a mid, oh, it's a corner.
Yeah,
It's a corner.
it's not a mid block, right, no, yeah, across 10, not across.
And then
So recommendation to strike the crosswalk on Tenny?
on Tenny.
Right.
And then, there was discussion, I don't know if this is part of what we can recommend, is to, to create some sort of educational program for the kids as far as crossing continental, or to design some program to address.
Yeah, well, let the
operational.
Yeah, let the mayor and council deal with that.
Right.
All right, is everybody satisfied with what we've heard?
Who was the one about turning the building 90 degrees?
To get the entrance to face the main park.
I don't agree with that.
I don't agree with that either. I leave it the way it is.
This site,
We don't have any money.
this site is so difficult now. If you go out there with the plans and look at what you got, and you look at what this borough has to live with because of Rossi, it's nearly impossible. I think they've done a fantastic job.
Certainly spent enough time on it.
Well,
I'd like to thank the members of the public for coming, the press for showing up. I'd like to thank Mr. Costa and his team for their excellent presentation. And on that note, and Tom, thanks for coming, and hopefully you'll get better by tomorrow. I would like to take a motion to
Before you adjourn, just in an abundance of caution, this board acts as one body. What I would like is for the board to make a motion, somebody
okay.
make a motion with a second,
With the recommendations.
with the recommendations, and direct me to issue a letter to the governing body.
All right. I'll take a shot at it.
You can just say it's stated on the record by the board attorney.
Excuse me?
You want to say it's stated on the record by the board attorney?
No, you don't have to read them all.
Yeah, well, I'll get to that point.
No, you don't have to read them all. Just by what the borough attorney
I
would
was
say.
going to read a preamble to the motion.
Okay.
It was going to be, whereas the mayor and council propose a community center adjacent to the existing public library, and as a courtesy and per the municipal land use law, has presented an overview of this project to the land use board for comments and suggestions. I therefore move that this board submit a full endorsement of the present project with the suggestions as recorded by the...
Very well said, sir. Do I have a second on that?
Second.
That was Mr. Sedaris?
Yep. And we'll take a roll call vote.
I'm sorry, I just need to put some notes down. The motion was made by Mr. Merman. I'm not going to follow your vote, Chad. With all due respect, I'm going to create my own tonight. Okay. Chair Killian?
Yes.
Ms. Boland? Yes. Mr. Merman?
Most definitely, yes.
Mr. Grasso?
Yes.
Mr. Cray?
Yes.
Mr. Caslin?
Yes.
Mr. Gibbons?
Yes.
And Mr. Sedaris?
Yes.
Thank you again.
Chairman,
You did a
thank
wonderful
you.
job.
Members of the board, thank you. Members of the public.
Al?
That's why I stuck around.
I could have given it to you, but I'm glad you stuck around. Do I have a motion to adjourn, folks?
So moved.
Do I have a second? All in favor? Any opposed, any abstain?
Sure you don't want your...
Too late.